And the battle is a really interesting one in terms of you guys trying to accentuate exactly the mod so that it looks like the real thing. I mean, when I was a kid and I was trying to get into commentating, all I had at my disposal was my Majorettes, my Hot Wheels, my Matchbox cars. You could paint them like the real thing, make a racetrack, and then go commentate on those. I mean, this is clearly a step up for you guys from what you guys used to do when you were teenagers. You guys are literally taking that level of how you used to play and then bigging it up with as much technological garble as you possibly can. This is like the next generation of play for you guys, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, a lot of us are right there with you. You know, we've got drivers spanning generations from just coming in, you know, they're hitting teens and they're just getting their hands on wheels and pedals right now, to a guy, Bob Robertson, he's our oldest one, an octogenarian, who's retiring from sim racing. He couldn't be here today, he wanted to, but he's battling COVID right now. We'll hopefully get him on for kind of a send-off in one of the upcoming races. But and you've got everyone in between. It's a wonderful mix of people, and we draw on experiences from every one of them. And just we all have a great time. It's huge.
Indeed. Get well soon, sir, by the way. I would love to think that one day I'm going to be an octogenarian with a microphone in my hand or sat up my rig. Good man. Excellent stuff. So, yeah, I mean, predictions for the race ahead, Ross. You're obviously going to be pushing to try and get yourself a podium to start the season off. I mean, what can we expect to see from the long stints, from the nighttime, from, you know, the differing tire strategies? What do you think is most likely to be the way things will play out?
It's going to be a toss-up. We had this the same race at our sister league, NARS, on Thursday night. Ran 2.4 hours. Attrition is going to be huge. Expect some fall off as some get frustrated with traffic early on. Some might struggle through the night and run into issues, technical issues, their own issues. That's going to be the biggest drive. Weather's in the area. We're not 100% sure what's going to happen, but it's Florida. Nobody ever is. So that's going to be huge. And then in general, drivers getting used to the cars, especially the new hypercars, and how they perform, how they handle over a stint. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns that anyone who hasn't spent extensive hours testing, they're gonna be exploring. So whether that exploration leads to newfound speed or, you know, a sail into the wall, you know, it's always a toss-up.
Yeah, it's always very unpredictable, which is what we love about it as a sport. We love it as a format as well. The last couple of laps coming in warm-up, what do the drivers actually do at this stage? What is it that you're actually looking for in the warm-up session? Are you trying to find a little bit better balance with the tires? Are you trying to find a bit more confidence in the braking zones? What can you actually learn?
Yeah, for a race this long, I think you're just trying to maybe tune out some balancing issues if you have anything, because you know what the car's pace is going to be generally for the whole run. And you're just kind of planning for like the long term on tires, making maybe some last minute adjustments, hopefully not too many unless you really want to roll dice. But it's really just gelling in and getting ready to have a 2.5 hour race.
Well, it's fantastic. I mean, I know that we're very limited for time because you've obviously got to hop back into the rig and get yourself set up and ready for the 2.4. But Ross, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy preparation to give us a little bit of an insight. It's been very, very beneficial. And we wish you all the best for the race ahead. Good luck.
Yes, thank you. Thank you guys, everyone here in the booth. You know, we really look forward to it. We really appreciate everyone's participation in this. And Jane Parfit Broadcasting for jumping in and doing this and putting a lot of stuff together last minute. You know, it's especially kind of out of their wheelhouse where they typically will do broadcasting, but they said, you know, we love a good challenge, and good on them, man. You know, we couldn't thank them enough for that kind of effort. And obviously, Michael, you're here too with that team, and yeah, everyone here. Thank you so much. We look forward to a wonderful race.
Yeah, good luck, man.
We all share the sentiments. Thank you very much, Ross. Go get a podium. Good luck.
All right, thanks. See you guys later.
So it's obviously going to be a very intriguing race. If you've just joined us or just rejoined us, we are going to get ready for a fantastic battle in the 2.4 hours of Daytona from the Virtual World Sports Car Championship, Modern Hypercars. I'm Jake Sanson. Beside me is Michael David. We also have Phil Stocks and James Parfit controlling the broadcast feed, and it looks as though we've got on top of most of our major issues that we were experiencing in qualifying. If you happen to be watching via the CMS Racing YouTube feed, then you can drop a comment in there. I'll try my best to answer answer any questions or direct them towards Mike, who may have a better idea than I do, or we'll just muck up for the entirety of the 2.4 hours and enjoy the show. It's all about the quality of the broadcast in terms of the fun element of watching as much as it is watching the racing go on. And I have to say, this is a perfect way to start the esports season for me. There's been a lot of guff talked about esports in the last couple of weeks with various different things, of which we won't go into in massive detail because it's already been talked about to high heaven. But one of the things I love about VWSC in particular, Mike, the community is what drives this sport. In particular with VWSC, with the CMS racing community, everybody is there to assist each other. Yes, there's rivalry. Yes, there's banter. Yes, there's good competition. But we're a community first. We're a family of racers who love what we do. We love the spirit of competition. And there's a massive amount of respect between these drivers, not just between each other, but also the people actually running the ship. It's one of the things that I always find is missing from esports is the level of respect with everybody, because people seem to have this God-given right to think they deserve to win this or they have to have this done because. But the community is what drives this, and it's beautiful to see it every time.
Yeah, I gotta say, I joined the community 24 hours ago. I just found out about this, from James a few days ago. Was unsure if I was gonna be able to be here, able to confirm and come through. So I just joined the community, and already within that first day, you can just see, exactly what you're saying. How everybody is just like, there to help each other, there to give as much information as possible. Obviously we have, everybody is here to race, and everything that goes along with that mentality. But like, everybody is very supportive of each other. Everybody's like, anytime that I've needed any information so far, it's been at my fingertips with barely even asking. It's been great. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be a part of this. And I'm really excited to see this season, this session go through. The VWSC, it seems like you guys have it like extremely thought out. This mod is phenomenal. These cars are great. And these drivers are obviously top-notch. I know we have some notes on a few of these drivers that are going to be here. So it's going to be very exciting to see how not just this 2.4 hours goes, but this entire season, really, to see how well everything is put together and how smoothly it goes through.
It's addictive, isn't it? I mean, within 24 hours, we've already poached Michael David, ladies and gentlemen.
Absolutely.
We've got him. We've hooked him. Hook, line, and sinker. So the warm-up is coming to an end. The times are relatively representative. I mean, it doesn't really make a massive statement in terms of what's going to happen over the course of the 2.4 hours, but we certainly know who has come out to play. There's a handful of drivers that have decided to dial a few things in, but as far as we're concerned, the race is about to get underway, and for 2.4 hours around Daytona, it's going to be brilliant. Now, for those of you who were wanting the tech specs, it's worth pointing out that in the 2.4 hours of Daytona, it will cycle as a virtual 24 hours across 2.4 hours. So it will go day to night back to day. And obviously, it will be an accelerated time cycle. However, the fuel and tires will be as standard one-to-one time. So the tires will still go to the distance that they would generally do in a standard spec race of normal time. And same with fuel consumption. So obviously, the strategy is going to come into that quite significantly, Mike. And that's one of the things that's going to be really interesting about the way this plays out, because it gets dark ridiculously quickly once it starts to set. So the drivers are going to have to be on their toes, not just to keep up with the light, but to keep up with the traffic and how those two variables actually mix up with each other.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see how these soft tires are able to, sustain themselves. I know we were talking to Ross a little bit about it pre-race there before everything got started, and I believe he said something to the extent of the soft tires, if you're extremely careful, you can double stint them, but I don't think we're really going to be seeing too much of that. Since it's a 2.4-hour race, yes, it is a bit of an endurance race. It's not just like hop into a lobby and just drive for 15 minutes and see who wins. It's going to be, a bit of a challenge, but at the same time, it's just short enough that maybe instead of trying to double stint the softs, maybe taking that second set of softs to get the fresher rubber down for your second or your third stint, that might be an advantage for some of these drivers.
So just a slight need to reset to the garage. So just a slight hiccup there. It does happen occasionally. It doesn't bear a massive relation to how the race is obviously going to be played out, but there's often a need for one or two additional drivers to get themselves queued up before the race gets underway. So in that instance, the race is usually reset, allowing the driver the time to get back into that server. It's also worth pointing out that with this being one of the biggest races in the Championship for VWSC, there's a massive subscription for this particular race, and they've already pointed out that if the server goes above 45 drivers, we have 34 that are registered, but if it goes above 45, a second server is actually set up, and then the accumulated aggregate time that they complete the race in for those distance of laps is actually then taken into account with the main server. So that is actually quite an amazing statement about just how popular this race can get. And it happened a few times over the course of 2022, and I'm sure it's probably going to happen again over the course of 2023. A week ago, of course, we had the historic race of 2.4 hours of Daytona, and now we get to see the modern variation. And for a lot of people, this could actually be the first time they get to see some of the hypercars that will be racing in 2023 in the real world actually turning some kind of visual in 2023. So it's a nice opportunity for the sports car aficionados out there to really get to see these cars in mobile action. But it's going to be the CMS Pro team on the front row of the starting grid for this one. We've just had confirmation that the warm-up has actually had to be rebooted due to a couple of technical difficulties for a few of the drivers. So that's just been rebooted to give the drivers the chance to get themselves sorted out and get themselves into position once again. So bear with us. We're not going to miss the start. Don't you worry. It's just going to be that little bit of extra preparation required for the drivers in the mix. And again, that's all to make sure that everybody gets a fair chance to go for the race victory. What can we talk about heading into the race itself, though? Well, Hypercar Am is actually not as far off the pace as I assumed they were going to be. Timon Suvic is right up there in the overall top 6. Henrique just outside the top 10. With Hutchison, Benchke, DeMarzo, and Miller all still really, for me, yet to show their true weight and their might. And those are the sort of drivers that tend to do better over a race distance rather than a one-off qualifying lap anyway. So you tend to kind of feel that certainly in the AM category, they're not really going to show us everything they've got until the race gets underway, particularly with Brian Hall in the Hall Brothers Cadillac. There was a bit of a trend, a bit of a tradition in 2022. Qualifying was not always where he managed to produce his best performances. It would often come in the race itself, where he would just wait for the chaos to die down over the first couple of laps, and then he would get himself into a neat little rhythm. There's Ross Smith, who joined us in the break between qualifying and race, and he is actually going to take this opportunity while the warm-up is back on to get out there on the circuit. He didn't get the chance before because he was too busy chatting to us, but a fabulous opportunity to get out there in this HPD Acura, another very smooth car to get the handle of. But obviously a very difficult race ahead of us, 2.4 hours of this Daytona circuit. And there's no driver changes. This isn't like a 24-hour event. The drivers that go in from the start, they stay in all the way through. The longest I've ever done on a simulated rig for one full race is an hour and a half. And I can tell you, Michael, that does take it out of you. People automatically assume, well, it's a video game, so obviously it's not that exhausting. How dare you suggest such a thing? It's not even close to accurate. I mean, once you get to sort of 55, 60 minutes in, you start to get a little bit of concentration fatigue. You start to get a little bit of muscle weakening. Certainly in the wrists, you get a lot of tightening, especially if your force feedback is to a certain level. Your heels start to cramp up. It can be very, very exhausting indeed once you get to sort of 75, 85 minutes. So to go 2.4 hours, these guys are really going to have to push it.
Yeah, I got to say, this is actually something I have a little bit of experience with. The longest I've done is a 4-hour race, broken up into 2.5 hours and then another hour and a half later on. So it was I think it was a 12-hour that we did with 3 people, and that's how my time kind of figured itself out. But yeah, you're exactly right. Even though it is technically a video game, you're not sitting here with a controller. These guys are all in very elaborate rigs. You know, you're gonna be using not just your physical abilities, but your mental ability, which is just as tiring. You know, you're sitting there and you think, you know, these guys get in the zone, and they kind of do. But for a race car driver, you know, a sim racer, being in the zone is being able to constantly, you know, change your attention span. Like whatever you're focusing on in 1 second can change in a split second, and you got to focus on something else. You're always making corrections. You're always thinking about what's next. You're never thinking about what's actually going on, like in the moment, because you have to plan ahead. So there's just so much thought process that goes into it that you don't really think about until you're like an hour and a half in. And you're like, wow, my brain is mentally drained right now, and I still have another hour before my switchover, you know, or the end of the race in this case. So not only are you going to be physically tired, but the mental aspect is something that cannot be understated. It is so important because every single lap you do, you have to be perfect or as near close to perfect as possible. One mistake ruins your entire race. So that's what I'm really, focusing on here for the long term, is who's able to not only stay consistent, but mentally, who's able to really grasp that 2.5 hours and just keep the attention span in place.
Yeah, it's so difficult. It's very, very difficult, to be fair. I mean, to be fair, I did one 24-hour sim race back in 2016, which was the Simply Race 24 of Estoril, and we finished third, and I genuinely felt that I was the weak link in the chain. My longest stint was the shortest stint of anybody, which was 90 minutes, and I genuinely felt in that 90 minutes that I was such a hindrance to the rest of the team. But when you've got people on that squad that will happily sit in the car and do 5 hours like a machine, and they will not make a mistake. I mean, we were very proud of the fact that we discovered John Munro as the esports superstar who of course is now the voice of Tracksim GG. You're very welcome, by the way, guys. Yes, we discovered him, we're happy. And Dan Kirby there just getting himself into a bit of a rhythm before the race really starts. But these guys will literally have themselves, me, myself, and I, as far as they're concerned, to rely upon. They cannot afford to drop off. They cannot afford to let things slip. And this is where a circuit like this is not going to be the easiest to manage either, because you've got that change around from the banking on the oval where you've got to balance your track position, you've got to balance your acceleration, you've got to make sure you're hitting the red line at the right point, the gear change has got to be spot on. When you're dealing with traffic, you've got to keep your car well placed so that you're predictable, because obviously if you're a hypercar trying to work your way through the GT3s, the onus is on you as a hypercar to move out of the way and make the overtake. The GT3s will not move out of the way for you. You've got to be the one who makes the overtake. So that has to play into the factor of it as well. And what we saw last year in the 2.4 were a lot of incidents where some of the stronger hypercar drivers were making just basic mistakes because you've been pushing for so long and your muscles are taking such a pounding that you can make mistakes fairly easily. Timon Suvic is going grass tracking there. He's clearly auditioning for the British Lawnmower Racing Championships a little bit later on this year. They have a 12-hour race for that, by the way, which is coming up in August of this year. Let's see how he did it. I think we just saw how he did it, actually. I do apologize. So, Timon Suvic, obviously auditioning for the BLMRA 12 Hours, which is at Wisborough Green every year. And that's one I'm hoping to be at in August of this year. But,
sorry, Jake. This is an actual 12-hour.
Oh, absolutely
track?
It is. Yeah, it is an absolute. Yeah, it's a 12-hour lawnmower race, and people come from all over the world to compete in it. It takes place every year, Wisborough Green, down about an hour south of London, in the middle of a farmer's field. And I'm not kidding, it is Le Mans in a field. They take it so seriously. One of the most competitive teams I've ever seen is a team called Dead Bull Racing. They are a fabulous bunch of guys. They actually have Red Bull Racing overalls with the bull upside down and dead. They're absolutely incredible. There's an amazing group of people. They go racing every single year, apart from COVID-19. The last time we actually ran them was 2019. Obviously, because in the world of farming, COVID is even more atrocious than it is in everything else. But yeah, the 12 hours, and they really do take it incredibly seriously. There are 40 mowers every year, and it's just astonishing. It's very much run in a similar spirit to this, actually. They take it very seriously indeed. And the one thing about that race, of course, which is always really inspiring, is that you don't just race if you're racing, you also marshal. Everybody has to take turns at marshalling through the course of proceedings. But yeah, they start at 8 p.m. and they run through to 8 a.m. That's brutal. That's really brutal. I can tell you that one.
That's insane. I got a couple questions here. Now,
oh, really?
Being an American, when I think of lawnmower racing, I think of, backcountry county fairs, where it's basically they hook either a tractor or a big old truck up to a weighted machine, and the further you go down it's kind of like a drag race, but instead of trying to go as fast as you can, you try to pull as much weight as far as you can.
That's tractor pulling, isn't it?
Tractor pulling. Yeah. So when you're saying lawnmower racing, Le Mans 24, that's so like are they mowing at the same time, or are they just?
Oh no! I should point out the blades are taken off. They do take the blades off, but it's basically your lawnmower. So in terms of your cricket
like a
lawn,
Craftsman riding a tractor.
Yeah, exactly that. So there are 3 separate classes depending on the kind of speed and the kind of power you want out of it. But it's done in a very similar manner to this. I have a feeling there's going to be a whole podcast on this at another time. I think Do you know, I think that story's going to come up again in the 4.8 hours of Le Mans when we've got a bit of time to delve into it in a bit more detail. I will save that and I'll bank it for then. But yeah, we're just getting ourselves finished off with the warm-up so we can throw ourselves into the action for the VWSC 2.4 hours of Daytona. And we are not far away from it. Massive thank you to those of you joining us with your patronage. Do drop us a comment if you want to in the CMS Racing YouTube stream. I've got it open in front of me. I'm Jake Sanson. Beside me is Michael David. We have Phil Stocks and James Parfitt looking after things on the broadcast side of things. It's certainly looking a lot better than it was before, which is fantastic news and great work to the whole team for bringing the coverage up to the top notch it deserves to be. And we are getting ready for these two Peugeots of Dan Kirby and John Uyan to lead us off from the front row of the starting grid. Now, we've got two Peugeots in front of two BMWs. Question, are they going to stay there? They're certainly the fastest in a straight line, but is the fastest car in a straight line going to have what it takes to win the 2.4 hour, Michael? And it's not easy to get that answer.
I think most tracks, it's pretty easy to kind of tell if it's going to be a high-end speed kind of race or something more intricate. Daytona, the Daytona infield, it just kind of throws a wrench in things. So it's going to be kind of hard. I think this track is a little harder to predict. As you know, like Spa, you got all these like long straightaways, and then you got that second sector where it's all about, you know, having the control and the stability in the car. Then you get to that third sector where it's just all long straightaways. So it's kind of like that in a sense, where you have one section that's just, and obviously there's three sections in the race in the track, but to kind of, you know, simplify it, there's one section that's just, you know, long straightaways, the banking curves, and then you got that tight, you know, infield sector. It's going to be complicated, but I think in the long run, it's hard for me to kind of guess.
Yeah,
especially since there's just so many there's so many things here that are new to me that I'm having a hard time kind of get a grip on things. So you'll have to bear with me here for a moment here. But I'm excited to see how it goes.
Soak it up. You're going to enjoy this. It's a very different technical challenge as we ride on board with our pole sitter, Dan Kirby. He lines up alongside his CMS Pro Peugeot teammate of John Uyan, Walter de Bruyn and Bradley Sellers in a pair of BMWs on the second row of the grid. Then Zander Talman will line up beside Timon Suvic in the leading AM car, the Kowalski Acura. Then Tom Lane and Brian Hall, Porsche versus Cadillac. George Andolidis in the Acura and Norm Graff in his Caddy. Then Magnus Dahlgren will be beside Wayne Hutchison. Philip Enrique and Ross Smith in their Acuras will be next up behind them. Then Matthew Overton in the Dark Thunder Porsche and the Flying Kiwi Porsche of Jerry Chen. Gilles Lalonde ahead of Guillaume Benchka, then Eric Moynet and Barry DeMarzo. Then come the GTs. Alicio Neto and Lewis Stevens, the leading cars in each category, sharing the front row. Alec King and Vasilidis Katerinakis. Then we'll see Vinicius Gonçalves and Brandon Gant. Then it'll be Johnny Gutierrez and Luciano Micazo from Luis Lemos and Stuart Barge. And then behind them, we will have Eugene Mazur and John Mayer from Mike Boyce and Stephen Miller, with Will Novak, Francisco Costa and Filippo Marazzi leading up the field in front of James Bowders. And then we will have just behind them, a little bit further back in the pack, a few more of the stragglers on that will be added in after the time qualifying. So it's going to be a fascinating challenge for all of our competitors. In all four classes, we are going to have a really solid battle, and the unpredictability is absolutely going to be the buzzword. We can see the two CMS Pro Peugeots with champion Dan Kirby behind the wheel. Alongside him will be his teammate John Uyan. And as they come off the final banking, they will form up in their positions. Now, obviously, they do not go 2x2 hurrah in VWSC. They go in single file formation because we want to make sure we have a clean start, because it's very important. It's very difficult to get a clean start if you go 2x2 hurrah, as you do in the real world in esports, because there are just too many variables with proximity. However, you're still going to get a really exciting start, because if Uyan gets his foot on the throttle just slightly before Dan Kirby, then the first sector is going to be a bit of a minefield. The drivers are going to come through, And we're going to see if Kirby can lead on the first lap of the race or if his teammate is going to give him a real run for the gold. 2.4 hours of the Daytona road course. Jake Sanson and Michael David with you, with Phil Stocks and James Parfit on the broadcast booth. And we have got great racing to come, and we are going to go green, green, green at Daytona. And it's a fabulous start from Kirby. He will come through in no problem at all up to the first corner. He's got to time the braking zone absolutely spot on. So Kirby gets off into the distance, takes in for turn 1, and gets it nice and neat. The Peugeot gives him everything he's got, but Uyan has not got as good a start. De Bruyne has moved up into P2 in the BMW, so he's already surged forward, and Sellers is trying to make the same move on John Uyan, and he's already looking for it around the outside. Goodness me, Sellers has actually got his nose in front, but can Uyan respond back on the outside? It's good rhythm from Sellers around the outside into third position. Beautiful start from the BMWs. So Wouter De Bruyne has already got himself into P2. Sellers has got himself into P3. And there's not a lot that John Uyan can do except watch it happen in his CMS Pro Peugeot. Lane is still there in 5th position. And then we've got Timon Suvic in P6.
I'm really interested to see what happened there with that start with John Uyan. He just kept falling back and back and back, you know, losing 2 positions to the BMWs there. He's right back on the heels of Sellers here, but that was an unfortunate start there for John Uyan.
A really tough situation for John Uyan, but now he is there tucked up. He's going to have his opportunity now because he's got better straight line speed than the BMW. He'll tuck up to the inside of the chicane, and he gets a bit squiggly on the curbs. That was very rough neck, but John Uyan manages to solidify it on the way through the second part of the apex. Meanwhile, in the GTs, you can see that Eliseo Neto has already got himself a decent bit of breathing space between Alec King, and in third place in GT, that is the leading car in the AM category. That is Stevens in the Mustang. So he is there in third position overall in GT, but he is leading the AM category, and he's already putting himself as the cat amongst the pigeons.
Yeah, he's got an absolute crushing distance gap there to Lumos, already 4 seconds, and being third overall. GT3 AM there in that Mustang, absolutely killer start here. He does have a little bit of stress coming up behind him here, so we're gonna have to see how well he's able to hold on to the back of that Porsche. But yeah, great start there for Lewis Stevens. Excellent qualifying, but so far at the beginning of this race, he's just continuing that and keeping it up.
Well, Mike, we seem to have lost a big name already from the fray. Zander Thalmann has disappeared on the opening lap of the race. Zander Thalmann was the third at the CMS Pro Peugeots. He's gone. So Zander Thalmann, we haven't even had the first 5 minutes of the race being completed yet, and one of the biggest names in this field, Zander Thalmann, is nowhere to be seen. He seems to have had an incident on the first lap. We didn't see it. Unfortunately, we can't really go back and show it because obviously time has moved on big time, but Zander Thalmann, who was right up there in the top 6 of the grid, is already out of this race. What a disaster.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. I did not see what happened there at all. So unfortunately, we'll have to, you know, maybe get a little word from him later on. But yeah, losing a top 6 driver like that, one of the CMS pros, who you know, they were starting off, they had what, 3 cars in the top 5.
So yeah, it looks as though he just completely DNF'd from the race. So a big disaster for Zander Thalmann, and that is just about the worst way to start the 2023 season before the first lap's even been completed. Now, we're looking at Brad Sellers. We ride on board with the Rookie Monsters BMW, chasing down the Peugeot.
Ooh,
Check out look at the rear. Check out the twitch there from John Uyan. You can see that the straight line speed is not as measured in the corners, is it? The BMW looks a lot more solid.
Yeah, the BMW is a very straightforward car. It seems like a very even across the board. That Peugeot is going to have quite a bit of acceleration advantage in that top end speed. Ooh, but getting it in those corners, that rear end is really something.
But now watch, because he can now step on the throttle and he can actually use the slipstream of Wouter De Bruyne in front. Sellers has got to stick like glue to him in the middle section of the lap because he can use the draft from that Peugeot. Look, the Peugeot is mighty in a straight line, but because Sellers is lined up behind him, he can really eat up the road in front of him. This is a good opportunity for Sellers. He can just get in the slipstream. Look at his work through the chicane. This is brilliant from Sellers. If There is going to be a good run from Uyan. Uyan can slipstream De Bruyne, and Sellers can outsmart them both. Look, here comes Sellers. He's going to go high side. That's the only way he can really position it, but he can time this right. Look, Uyan's going to go left side. Sellers really needed to follow him there to have a chance of getting through past his teammate. He's going the wrong way for my money, but he's going to try and commit to it. Now that he's going right, he's got to commit to it. Round the outside, very deep and late on the brakes, and Sellers has got him. That is a beautiful move. Sellers moving up from fourth to third past his teammate De Bruyne, but he used the slipstream of Uyan to good effect there. And I have to say, fair play to Brad Sellers. He pulled that one from nowhere.
Yeah, taking that outside line all the way through turn one there, that's a dangerous move, and he did it professionally, did it cleanly, was able to get on the brakes, get the move done, and fall in the line behind Uyan. We see a yellow in the first sector. I'm not sure what's going on with that.
Well, that's kind of where we are at the moment, so it looks as though somebody's dropped it already. I think Miller has already had a problem in the Ferrari, so, in the Stuart Haas caddy, I should say, and Miller has come into the pits already to park it in the garage, so Miller looks like he's already the race's second retirement, which is very disappointing indeed. Back to the Hypercar AM category. Now we're watching Wayne Hutchison. Suvic is very much in no man's land as he battles with the leading Hypercar category cars up in front, but Hutchison is trying to get into a bit of a rhythm. He's a second ahead of the man in third place, that's Enrique, but look at Timon Suvic. He's just settled into a nice rhythm in the lead of this race in the AM category, but he's kind of on his own. This is going to be a really tough battle for Suvic. Yes, he's leading the AM category by quite a way, but when you're out on your own, you've got nobody to slipstream, you've got nobody really, well, I say he's got nobody to slipstream, and there he goes catching the GTs, just to eat my words straight away. But Suvic, it's a tricky situation when you're on your own, leading the way in the AM category of the Hypercars, when you're trying to stay close to the pros and you're trying to stretch away from your advantage. It's a tricky one. Now we've got an off somewhere further down. So it looks like Norm Graff in the caddy. Norm Graff in the caddy has had a bit of a moment. That's what happened.
That's a GT.
He just tagged in with one of the GTs, and it's so easily done. Norm Graff, big damage coming the way of the caddy. So that is absolutely disastrous for the Cadillac V. And Norm Graff, well, it's so, we said this, didn't we, before the broadcast? We said that it was so easy to get caught out in other people's problems, so easy to trip over back markers, and yet again, it's early doors for that in 2023.
Yeah, and we didn't get a great angle at that incident, but it looked like the Lamborghini had already been sitting in the middle of the track, so maybe there was an incident that happened and he just was unable to avoid that. So if that's the case, then it's just completely unfortunate, but didn't really see the full incident there, as we see a couple more of these LMDH cars getting around some of the GTs, and that's going to be something that's going to be coming up for the rest of the race, is, you know, dealing with traffic. We discussed it a little bit pre-race, but that's going to be one of the biggest things here, is who's able to kind of deal with their traffic. And just to touch on the point real quick, the draft here is huge. So for Sovic to not only keep that lead dealing with the traffic, but trying to keep up with those pros, he's kind of in a no man's land right now.
Yeah, for him to be on his own is very tricky. We just saw Gilles Lalonde going into the pits as Dan Kirby carves his way through to the LMGT3 AM category. Just picking them off one by one like raisins, and Dan Kirby is now stretching his advantage, but he's only 0.8 of a second ahead of Sellers. So all it's going to take is one trip up over one back marker, and Sellers is going to have his opportunity to take the lead. So Kirby is patient behind the Bentley. As we watch Timon Suvic now working his way through. He's got an Acura in front of him, so he dives his way through. So Acura takes Acura, Hypercar on GT3, and then Suvic now starting to line up the Bentley that's to his right-hand side. So this is all about taking your time. And penalty going the way of Costa by the look of it. So that's already gone very badly wrong indeed in the GT brigade. So that is Francisco Costa in the Audi. That's got to be related to the incident that we saw for Norm Graff.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be interesting. We'll see if we get a little bit more information on that. But Timon Suvic getting those moves done there very cleanly through the infield there. Very impressive driving. You'll be able to manage that traffic there. We know with the blue flags here, the blue flag doesn't necessarily mean you have to get out of the way, but it is up to the passing car, the faster car, to make the move. So that was very well done there, I think, by Suvic, and hopefully we'll see some more of that later on.
Absolutely right. The onus is always on the car doing the overtake to move, not the guy in front. And that's exactly what we see from Timon Suvic. So Kirby is just trying to work his way through the traffic, and he knows that this is the best opportunity to try and pull out a gap over Sellers in the BMW. So Kirby and Sellers, the gap is now 1.6. De Bruyne is only 3 seconds back from that, as Stevens now sets the best time in the GT3 AM category. He puts in a 1:44.5, and he is leading by, get this, 13 seconds in the early stages. He is absolutely monstering the AM category. He's there battling away for the GT victory. If he keeps this going, oh, and drifting off the road completely, that's one of the caddies. One of the caddies has just drifted off the road there in the hypercar category. I didn't quite see who that was. We're going to have another look at it, but Lewis Stevens in the Mustang just watches one of the caddies just drop it in front of him. He's having to get out of the way now as the hypercars all twitch through to his right. But we just saw one of the caddies drifting off the road. Didn't quite see which one that was, unfortunately. But certainly you can see that there's some big pressure. I wonder if that was Guillaume Benschke, because Benschke was right in behind Hutchison, and then he's... Oh, it might have been Lalonde, actually. Gilles Lalonde, who's obviously already had his problems. He's in the Peugeot rather than the Cadillac, of course, but Gilles Lalonde, having already had a bit of an incident and having to come into the pits once already. So Gilles Lalonde is getting himself back up to speed again in the 93 Peugeot. And
yeah,
so
there was a little bit of clarification there.
Yes, indeed. I mean, it's so easy. The first race of the year is always the worst ones to pick cars out because we're still getting to know what they look like. That's the problem. We're always going to get it wrong the first time.
Absolutely. But I was going to say here, we're already losing 3 Cadillacs. That's not boding well for my prediction pre-race that the Cadillacs were going to come on strong. But like you said, that's a Peugeot there. So only 2 Cadillacs down here, and we'll see how we go here as we follow along with Brian Hall.
So Zander Tolman and William Miller are the only retirements so far. 42 started, 40 are still going. And, well, we've still got over 2 hours to go. They did say, didn't they? Ross Smith told us that the attrition rate was going to be high. Expect a lot of drama. We've already had a fair bit, and we haven't even been racing for 20 minutes yet. So Brian Hall in the caddy, this is what he does best. He just gets himself into a bit of a rhythm. 7th position now for him. He's got plenty of time still to go. He just works his way past the cars, nip one, pearl one, drop one, curl one, just look for those opportunities, goes right, finds his way through on the BMW without even breaking a sweat. And this is where Brian Hall makes up a lot of his time in races. He just keeps himself to himself, doesn't get into other people's messes or melees, he just gets himself into a smooth, rhythmic, metronomic pace, and he picks up the pieces when everybody drops them.
Yeah, and I think he used the words correct there. Smooth, rhythmic, you know, especially with that Pink Floyd livery he's driving with that car, man. He's just all about being on time. I'm all about it.
It's a beautiful livery, and it's very apt considering that this year is, of course, 50 years anniversary since the release of Dark Side of the Moon. Expect that to go to the top. Yeah, it is indeed. Yeah, expect that to go to the top of the charts again, both American and British music scene. I'm sure they're going to release another version of it. But yeah, it's great to see Philippe Enrique battling away with Wayne Hutchison. Look at the gain. You mentioned this earlier, Michael, about the draft. Hutchison has gained big time in the draft, just sat in the draft behind Philippe Enrique. They're working their way through the GTs, but this is where the Porsche can really start to gain ground. Look, he's gone high side along with Enrique. The gap was 0.3 of a second, but look, it's just disappearing, disappearing, disappearing. This is where Hutchison can make his break. He's decided to go wide side as well, because Enrique is hugging that inside line. Hutchison can't make the overtaking move into turn 1. He's got to bail out of it, but he's got to wait for an opportunity. Let's ride on board with him for a spell. Let's listen in.
We definitely have a challenge here with this 488 here.
Yeah, this is where they've got to be patient. Back up through the gears. Hutchison just following in behind Enrique. You can't really get any draft in this midsection at all. You've just got to be patient and hope the guy in front just locks up or drops it, misses a gear. He's staying hungry. This is really good from Hutchison. Just keep breathing those exhaust fumes. Spit out those stones. Get yourself into a good position, ready for a run up the high side. This is where Enrique is really going to be vulnerable, and he does drift a little bit wide. Hutchison's going to have his opportunity now. Just wait, get in the groove. Enrique's going to go well.
The faster they can get up to speed, the stronger that draft's going to be, and that's where he's going to have see if he's going to have a chance to make a move down to the bus stop here.
Actually, to be fair to Enrique, he actually got a better run off the left-hander than Hutchison did, so Hutchison is going to have to really chuck it in through the bus stop to have another crack at him. Kirby bangs in another fastest lap. Well, Hutchison's made some time, but I don't think he's made enough to be significant into turn one again. Look, Enrique's able to break the turn at exactly the right point. So this is a battle that's going to go all the way to the pit stop between these two, I think. Enrique and Hutchison seem to be very much an even match for each other. In terms of lap pace, we know there's nothing between them in terms of qualifying. But in terms of race pace too, it looks as if this pair of drivers is going to be snapping at each other's heels throughout. It's great to see that every time one of them gains an advantage, the other one always seems to have a response.
Yeah, no, it's definitely coming in waves. You see one driver kind of peak a little bit. You see the other driver kind of repeat that and crest here. As we see this Porsche is really strong here through the infield section. And Philip Enrique was able to really just break that draft, like you said, break that toe. That's what saved him there. That's what pushed Wayne Hutchison back a little bit. But as we see here, Hutchison's even like falling back through this sector on this lap as well. So I'm not sure if maybe Hutchison just had a crucial lap there, was able to make up some time, but Enrique is definitely having an answer for him now.
So you can see on the top of your graphics there, the leaders in class. You can see them to the left of your screen as well. Kirby leads the way in Hypercar.
Much closer this time.
Yeah, this is a good opportunity now. Hutchison's really been pushing hard on this out lap. It's an opportunity. He's going a little bit higher side than Enrique, just to give himself a little bit of breathing space for the braking zone, because if he's too close in the braking zone, then he can just charge straight into the back of him. He has to give himself a little bit of a momentum. That's perfect. He just eased up a little bit. And look, you saw the twitch there from Enrique. This is the opportunity. Hutchison knows it. He's going to be eating it up, eating it up. Let's watch. Tucks in. Closer, gaining, looking for the way. He goes left. That's where Enrique places him. Can he beat into the braking zone? We saw this move from Sellers earlier on. It's not going to happen. Enrique, very much the man who can hold that inside line.
Great defensive driving here by Enrique, but looks like Hutchison's going to try to make a move here. He's going to kind of dip his nose in a little bit just to remind Enrique that he's still here, and it looks like he's getting really, really close here through this infield section.
See, this is what Dale Earnhardt was always famous for in NASCAR, just intimidate the guy in front. He barely ever made a clean overtake. He just waited for the guy in front to make the mistake, and then he fitted himself into that gap. It's a great technique, and it's what makes legends. So Hutchison just hustling Enrique every single apex, looking for the opportunity.
Hutchison got a little loose there on that exit, so he might have lost a little bit of time, but we'll see how they come out here, coming on to the back straight.
Well, we're yellow in Sector 3, so it's quite sustained for a bit there. We're not quite sure who that was involved. Just checking to see if we've lost another couple of drivers. We have indeed. Stephen Boyce appears to have gone. So too has Norm Graff after his earlier shenanigans. Vinicius Gonçalves and Gilles Lalonde have all parked it as we watch Filippo Marazzi come out of the pits in the Ferrari. So Filippo Marazzi was the reason that we went yellow in Sector 3 initially. He's now come back out onto the first sector once again after the run. So just keeping an eye on Enrique and Hutchison. Hutchison is now a second back, actually, so he must have got it slightly wrong in one of the apexes. Meanwhile, Kirby is still there or thereabouts in front of Sellers. 3.6 seconds is the deficit, but again, just take your time. Don't rush it. You've got a slow car in front of you. Just wait. Wait for the apex and the radius to open up. Hit the car up the inside line. That's perfect from Dan Kirby. This is why he is a champion, because you just take your time. It's never a rush. In a race, you always kind of wonder, well, how much of a gap do I need to build over the guy behind me? Well, you've obviously got to work very hard at that. And actually, Sellers has lost a fair bit of time being stuck behind another driver. He's been itching to try and get close to Kirby, but Kirby just takes his time about it. He doesn't have to rush his way past these back markers. He's got the advantage. He's got the track position. Just give yourself a little bit of time, and he's actually going through the field much more efficiently than the BMWs behind him.
Yeah, he's definitely able to pick his opportunities with this GT3 class field, you know, taking these overtakes when he wants to, but also able to kind of do it smartly. And in certain situations, it looks like he's almost able to use one or two of these GT3 cars in a defensive manner, because he's able to really just continually gain time here on Sellers. Just a second ago, he was down about 5.5 seconds, now up to 6.7 seconds, so he's gained at least about a second, I believe, on this last lap alone. We're about 18 minutes into this race, and like you said, we've had quite a bit of attrition already so far. So I'm excited to see, as we see Loser making the move here on Lumos.
So is Limos going to be able to get side by side with Eugene Mazur? The Pazuzu Porsche is trying to hold the inside line. He's in the middle of the road. There's not a lot of racetrack to play with. Luis Limos is going to commit to it though, and the leader's got to hang back here. He's got to wait for this to unfold. Limos is going to put himself on the inside. They bang doors, and still Kirby's got to wait for this opportunity. Is going to open up. He's going to storm past them. Kirby so nearly in the hot seat and in the danger zone, but Mazur and Limos keep it as clean as possible despite banging doors. That is about as close to the limit as you can get without taking each other out of the race.
Yeah, Mazur there with a great save, able to keep the contact under control there. Kirby able to get through, but he lost quite a few seconds there. I think he lost about 2 seconds off of that incident alone there. So definitely going to be a little frustrating for Kirby. Excellent moment for Sellers, and now Sellers is able to take advantage of that. See how he makes through the
he's been held up.
here.
He's been really held up in the bus stop. That's not good news for Sellers at all.
He did a great job of getting around Mazur there, but definitely got held up by Lumos.
Well,
sorry, I had that backwards there.
Yeah, very tricky situation, and that's cost Sellers even more time. The gap is back down to 6 seconds again. It was back up to 6 seconds, I should say, because obviously Kirby lost a bit of time negotiating around them. That time has just been negotiated once again. We're on board with Wouter de Bruin as he tries to close up on his teammate. Wouter de Bruin was one of the most reliable pairs of hands in the 2022 campaign. Had plenty of good days throughout the season, but this year he has his eyes set on one thing and one thing alone. The title was Bradley Sellers. Goodness me, the back end almost overtook the front.
Yeah, he got real loose there coming out of that exit, that corner exit there in that BMW, which is a little surprising. I think those BMWs are, pretty confident, pretty planted to see one coming loose there this early in the stint. It's a little surprising there.
Still?
He's still losing it. Yeah, I'm not sure. That might be a setup issue there.
Yeah, De Bruin has actually now found the move on the inside line. Bradley Sellers just getting sideways, and now De Bruin is through. There is Bradley Sellers. Well, is that a setup problem? Have the tyres fallen away? Whatever it might be, but Brad Sellers definitely losing positions now.
I think it's a little early for the tires to be falling away here. I'm not 100% confident on the attrition here in rFactor 2. This is a new sim to me, so I don't know exactly how the tire model is, but to me, this early in the race, that has got to be either a mental mistake or a setup error.
I mean, it can drop off fairly quickly, and we are heading into the nighttime phase now. We did say that obviously 2.4 hours is actually going to look like 24, and the light is going to fade very quickly indeed. You can see just how quickly it's getting dark. So Brad Sellers is now going to have to try and bounce back, get himself back into the mix here with Wouter de Bruin, his teammate. He'll just hang back for the moment. He made a fantastic overtake earlier on, but the thing is, once you start getting a little bit too aggressive, then things can get really frenetic. 2 hours to go in the 2.4 here at Daytona. And there's something very special about this race each year, but this man, Dan Kirby, wants it to be extra special. 2022 was good. He wants to turn the dial up to 11.
Yeah, right now, Daniel Kirby is just absolutely dominating this race. That incident that he had between Lumos and Menus definitely set him back a little bit, but we can already see he's already gained a few seconds on De Bruin there, and he is back in control of this lead, keeping his head down, keeping his calm, cool, confident demeanor here. Daniel Kirby just off to the races here at the first half of this race.
See, it's interesting you mentioned the battle we saw earlier on between Limos and Mazur. Limos is actually the one who's got through, so he's actually now up to third position, and he's 5 seconds clear of Eugene Mazur. So I don't know whether Mazur was holding him up or whether he had a problem of some kind, made a mistake somewhere, but certainly Limos is now the one who's got through. Oh, goodness me, somebody's down on the apron. Now, you're not allowed to be on the apron for too long, but certainly somebody having a problem there and probably making their way to the pits. Meanwhile, there is your leader in GT3. That is Alec King in the Shade Tree Porsche, and he is having a very smooth run out there in the lead of the race. He wasn't the fastest one in qualifying. That was Eliseo Neto, who finds himself now in 4th position. It's not so easy to run at the front.
Down to 6th.
Yeah, indeed. So Neto has actually had a couple of runs off now. So Neto, who was the fastest in qualifying, certainly having a bit of a struggle now. This could be a race win disappearing, but leader takes leader. Kirby gets past King, and that's obviously for lapping a back marker as far as Kirby is concerned, although into the pits now comes Neto, and also in comes Miller. So Miller, who did park it earlier on and started to rejoin the circuit. So Will Miller, who is technically still the last classified runner. So there is Will Miller, and you can see down the pit lane, that is Alessio Neto, the man who got fastest time in qualifying in the GT3 category. So both of them taking early pit stops. I think both of them might have been unscheduled. So Dan Kirby leads high side as he flies up on the banking. That is such a satisfying moment. I've only ever driven a prototype race car once around the Daytona Motor Speedway in virtual competition, and that was a vintage Mazda Renown from 1991, and that is one heck of a car to take around the Daytona banking, I can tell you. But the feeling of satisfaction that you get when you ride the curbs at the bus stop, when you place the car exactly where you need it to be on the banking, when you nail a move onto the inside line, it is absolutely spot on. Let's ride with the leader, Dan Kirby. Let's take you on a lap. Over the line, you've got to try and pitch your braking point just so, and you can see there's a little bit of a hesitation there, a little bit of a twitch to go through on the apex. You take it nice and smooth, you try and accelerate through this right-left kink, up through the dog leg, and then you come up to the hairpin, tightening your way through. You've got to be patient on the throttle. There's the throttle. You nail it as you come off the middle of the apex. And back on the speed and back on the power once again. You've got to carry a lot of pace through this left-hand kink. It's a tough corner, and it catches people out every single lap nearly. Through on the right-hand sector. With the radius, keep it nice and tight. Again, just getting a little bit aggressive on the apex for the aggressive on the braking zone. Got to turn in, then open up the throttle with it. And up on the banking. And this is all about patience. This is about being smooth. See, the slightest, the ever so slightest of movements on the wheel gets you all the way through. Open up, get a little bit more high to the wall. And watch the steering wheel application through the bus stop, through the left, right, right, left. Plenty of curb on the way in, catch it back on the way out, and just keep the wheel traveling. You don't treat it as two separate chicanes. You treat it as one long S. Then back on the radius of the apex of the banking once again. Hold it to the middle. Open it back up. Perfect. That is how you take a lap at the Daytona road course. It's an amazing place, a real cathedral of speed.
Yeah, absolutely. And that infield is so challenging because you come into it and it's so awkward and flat and tight through turns 1 and 2, coming through that little S, and then you come to that awkward, kind of almost off-camber hairpin there. That turn is so hard to get right with your throttle implications because, if you just jump on the throttle just a tiny bit too early, you're gonna send it. If you wait too long, you're gonna be off on the outside into the curbing, into the grass. That hairpin is so quietly a tough turn right there.
This GT battle's getting a little bit spicy, Mike. We've got Katarinakis now just under a second off the pace of Alec King, and you can see there that King is just doing his best to eke out that gap. He's just had to let Timon Suvic get through, and now Vasilis Katarinakis in the Stardust Acura. He has got every opportunity to take advantage of a slip-up. Alec King is doing such a good job here to try and hold on, but Katarinakis is the chaser, and it's always easier to be the cat than it is to be the mouse.
Oh, definitely, for sure. If you're Alec King, you're definitely playing a defensive role right here as we see that Porsche getting very defensive coming out here. Looks like the Acura is going to have an advantage on the straightaway here. We'll see if he's able to make the job, get the move done before the bus stop, or if he's going to have to wait as we see him drafting here through the turns. Coming into the straight here as we see he's going to stay tucked up behind him. Is he going to make a move at the last second? And no, he's going to stay behind him, coming into the bus stop. He's going to stay to the left, getting real close there on the right. Oh, that was a little too much inside curb there.
Goodness me, that almost chucked him into the chicken house. Vasilis Katarinakis so sideways as he came through the second part of the bus stop. He was lucky to catch that, and that's just cost him a tenth of a second or so. That's cost him a chance to go for the lead into turn 1 for my money, but that just shows you how easy it is to get loose, how easy it is to let the back end travel. And Katarinakis, he's not out of this by any stretch of the means. If anything, this battle's just got started. And Alec King, he's going to have to be very careful. He's got to keep one eye on the road ahead. He's got to keep one eye on that rearview mirror.
Yeah, I can't agree more. It's going to be a tough challenge here for Alec King as we go through this section of the race. 1 hour and 53 minutes left, so you can't start thinking too far ahead. But here shortly, we're going to start seeing our first pit stops. We got a little bit more time here, but we are going to start seeing what our strategy calls are going to be. And it's going to be interesting to see how Alec King not only plays defense here, keeps his head in the game here, but
big error from King. And Katsmanakis might try and go for it into the inside of the left-hander. He's committing. Oh, King just shuts the door in time.
That took his nose off there. That was real close.
So now up the inside. That's one of the hypercars going through. Now watch King. He's got to try and get back on terms with this nice and quickly because Katsmanakis is less than half a second back. So Katsmanakis has got to try and make a way through. He's got to try and stick with him up to the bus stop. In fact, Katsmanakis actually had to get off the throttle a little bit out of the left-hander initially, and that's cost him a little bit of rhythm. Oh, he's got to be careful on that grass. Just got one wheel over the dirt, and that can really hamper your chances, not just because you're running the gauntlet of track limits, but also you're giving yourself a bit of a problem later, because if one tire isn't quite taking the tarmac the same way, then you're going to have a major balance issue towards the end of the stint, with one tire being less worn than the others, and that's really going to cause big problems once you get into the braking zone, once you get back on the throttle again, out of a slow apex. There's a lot that can go against you.
Such a little change on your setup can change the way the car drives and feels so much. It can be so significant. Just like you said, having that one tire wear just slightly differently than the rest of them further along into your stint is really going to start throwing the balance of that car off. These GT3s are very setup dependent at certain points in certain aspects. So that's going to be extremely important to keep an eye on here as he continues to go through that bus stop chicane. Really kind of dangerously almost through the second half of that.
So now the hypercars just trying to knit their way through. Now this is a good chance for Katsmanakis. Let him go. Sit behind him. Sit behind him like glue. That's it. Now watch, because Alec King is going to have to hesitate for a fraction of a second, and this is where Katsmanakis can get in the draft of the hypercar as it knits its way through, and now you can stick back on Alec King. Now, he didn't quite gain as much time as he would have liked there, but that's certainly the way to get back on terms with it. So Kirby is leading the way in the hypercars with 1 hour 50 to go. De Bruyn is about 11 seconds back. Sellers, his teammate, is sticking with him to go second and third, the two BMWs. There they are together. So De Bruyn and Sellers just getting in a nice little rhythm at the moment. Lane finds himself in fourth position in front of George Anderlidis and Magnus Dahlgren. And that's how the top six of the hypercar category looks. There is Lane, doing a good job in the Manta Squid. And there is the gorgeous Pink Floyd-inspired livery of Magnus Dahlgren. Oh, blimey. I can feel another brick in the wall coming on. It's a great run from Magnus Dahlgren as he runs through. And he's keeping it nice and steady in the flow of the traffic. There's Timon Suvic, who leads the way in Hypercar Am. And he's half a minute in front of Enrique. A very solid run for Suvic so far. Haven't really seen him make any mistakes in the first part of the race. So certainly in the daytime into the night, Suvic is very much under the pressure of no pressure at all. Enrique, however, has very much got the habit of this now. And he's... well, that was a bit brave, but he certainly had plenty of enough room to make it stick, so that's fair enough from Felipe Enrique. He clearly feels that Hutchison's going to give him plenty of pressure through the course of the race, though. He's going to have to try and stay as far ahead of him as he can in the pit stops, because Hutchison's really going to be a threat through the nighttime stages. In fact, Hutchison is right in there in the mix with the GT3s and the GT3 AMs. That's King and Katsmanakis. He's managed to get past Katsmanakis. He now gets through past King, and that's going to leave King vulnerable to the leader, to the second place man behind him. Look, Katsmanakis a lot closer now than he has been on previous laps. So King needs a good run off the turn. That's one of the CMS pros going around the far side. Oh, sorry, that's the Ferrari, I should say, going around the far side. So a really interesting run for King. But is he going to be able to hold on to this? Well, Katsmanakis is still there with him.
Yeah, I don't think Katsmanakis is going to be close enough to make a move here, and we see another hypercar coming into the picture there.
See, this is the problem for Katsmanakis. That Audi is just, the Acura, is just not as quick off the turn as a Porsche. The Porsche is a little bit faster on acceleration out of the corner, and so by the time the Acura has the opportunity to get the slipstream, it's already lost a little bit too much time to actually counteract the draft. So it ends up being, you know, a can't win situation. He's got to go backwards to go forwards, but then he can't stay forwards enough, so he ends up dropping further back. So now he's a second back from Alec King. He's lost about half a second through that whole procedure. It's a very tricky one. He's got to hope that Alec King makes the error.
Yeah, Alec King is definitely playing this, playing the hand that he's been dealt. He's able to really take advantage of this nimble Porsche through the infield sector here, and then coming onto that back straightaway, coming into what, turn 3 and 4. He's got the advantage, like you said, with the acceleration of that Porsche, absolutely keeping him in first place right now of the pro class. But Katarinakis not going away, not falling, not stressing out too much. He's unable to make the move here and there, but he's getting really close here, and we'll see how this move gets done as he's able to hold speed through, and it's going to be close here.
That's more like it. He's going to have an opportunity now. Look at that rear view mirror. Katarinakis may as well be playing the Jaws soundtrack right now. He's got King against the ropes. Down the back straight. Wait for the move. Wait for the move. Wait. There's no point committing in the bus stop. Take the racing line. That's better. King's got to move back across as well. King's going to wobble. Wait for it. Wait for it. Get back on the power. That's it. But King's been stronger.
Yeah, Katarinakis definitely got a little bit loose through that second part of the chicane. Not as much as we've seen there, but King just having a way smoother drive through the bus stop.
This is fascinating to watch between these two. They are giving as good as they've got. And don't forget, this is for the lead in GT. So this is absolutely for the victory in the GT category. The two best drivers out there currently so far are literally swapping sector times, swapping apex radiuses, and swapping acceleration points. This is amazing between King and Katarinakis. And when it comes to the pit stops, neither of them are going to be allowed to give an inch.
No, not at all. Pit stops are so crucial in racing here, the GT world. But yeah, no, you really be able to not only see how strong of drivers these are, but the differences between these two cars, where one excels and where one kind of, is a little worse off or better off in certain different parts of the track here. We see that the Audi is, or I'm sorry, I did the same thing, the Acura there, really getting strong, really getting an opportunity here, but that Porsche is just able to keep him at bay. I think he's going to have another opportunity coming out of here.
Right, Katarinakis is trying to be a bit like a wasp at a picnic right now. He's trying to irritate King to the point where King has to react differently to where he would normally go. Look, Katarinakis is just hunting him down, making his car as big as physically possible in that rearview mirror. Looks left, looks right, looks left, looks right. King has to respond on instinct here. He's got to try and stay calm because Katarinakis is going to make him make the mistake. Here he goes, left, bus stop. King reacts nicely. See, Katarinakis has to bail out of it. King is actually being incredibly smart here, but this time Katarinakis hasn't lost as much time as he normally would, so now he's got the draft effect. Here he comes through the final bend.
They have an opportunity coming in turn 1.
He will. He absolutely will. Now King has got to hold the inside line. He's got to send Katarinakis right.
No, King's holding his distance. He's holding on to it.
There is a little bit more throttle coming off that turn for the Porsche, isn't there? The Acura.
Yeah.
He's got draft, but he hasn't got enough straight line speed. He can't do anything with it.
Ooh, coming into turn 1 there. That was brave.
Was that two drivers going four-wheel drift, battling for the GT victory? I think it was. And now Katarinakis is trying again to go left side. King is now protecting the inside line. Katarinakis is trying to get the switcheroo. Can he come through? No. King holds his car perfectly on the exit.
He's going to have an opportunity here, though. He's not going away. He's got his nose in there. That Porsche's got the drive, and he's got the handling ability. But that Acura of Katarinakis is just not going away.
Right, Sellers has pitted. Sellers has pitted from P3, so he's come off the back of his teammate De Bruyn, and that's the first big name in the prototype category. So that's a big one as far as the play out of the race is concerned. Sellers is the first of the big guns to come in. So he's going to hand third to Lane. He hands fourth to Angelidis, and I think Hall should get through for fifth place as well. But that's going to be crucial. Sellers has decided to blink first, so it'll be very interesting to see what will happen now with Kirby and De Bruyn when they choose to pit. But Sellers decides enough is enough. He doesn't want to stare at his teammate's gearbox or rear wing anymore. Now, this could be interesting. We've got a hypercar bearing down on these two. And this is where They're going to be on their instincts, and they've also got some slow GT3 AM cars that they're finally coming up to lap in front of them as well. There goes the BMW, goes high side. Katarinakis just waiting, biding his time. See, he's close to King, but he's not close enough. And now they're starting. Now, this could be a chance. Starting to use the back marker, but again, look, King has already gone. He can't use the draft behind the Corvette to good effect, and he's going to be stunted.
King really took advantage of that. That was a very brave move down to the inside there. Almost through the double lines of yellow there. That was... Oh, King lost the back end.
Yes, King has lost the back end, and Katarinakis is going to get him. There you go. There's the mistake, and Katarinakis is going to take the lead.
That was a brave move by Katarinakis going around that Corvette there. But yeah, as we saw there, King getting very loose coming into turn 2 there. That's a tough, tricky spot there. Especially that Porsche.
Kirby's pitted. So the race leader comes in a lap after Sellers. So Kirby comes in and trying to make his way through. That is De Bruyn. That is the race leader, De Bruyn, trying to work his way through past the GTs once again. And so what? Oh no, sorry, that's his teammate Sellers. Actually, it's Sellers who is there trying to work his way back up the order. Because obviously Sellers has made the pit stop. There is Brad Sellers. He's obviously gone through and disappeared and left them to it. But it's still Katarinakis versus King. But this time, it's Katarinakis that has taken the lead in the GT category. That was stellar. And I tell you what, the commitment from Vasilis Katarinakis on the inside of that Corvette. I mean, that's this early in the race. You've either got to be brave or stupid to go for a move like that. And clearly, Vasilis Katarinakis is like the Rock out there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else I could say here. I think I have to go ahead and disagree with that move.
Sorry, Mike, did I see an incident behind them? Did I see something there in Sector 2? I think I did. Something big has happened there. Coming through Sector 2 and into Sector 3 at the bus stop. I think I saw a car go up in the air. So, I think it was Lewis Stevens, the Ford Mustang. That's the leader in GT3 AM. Now, unfortunately, we can't go back and have a look at it because we've got a couple of issues that we're dealing with. But I tell you what, that is a big, big moment in the race, and Stevens has had a big one, and Stevens is in the pits. He's out. Lewis Stevens, from the lead in GT3 AM, is out of it. Oh, my goodness.
Crushing. He was having such an amazing race there to lose focus coming into the bus stop, but that's just how these things go. You know, you have to pay attention every single second that you're on track here. Every corner, every throttle input, every brake input, everything is, you know, it's a mental game as far as, you know, keeping your attention on point. That's just really tough there for Stevens.
That is how quickly your race can go from dominant to over. Stevens was absolutely blistering away from his GT3 AM opponents, and now it's game over, literally. Barge has taken the lead. So Stuart Barge in the HPD Acura is now the leader in GT3 AM. Limos and Mazur, they're battling away for second now. It was third. So, yeah, big change in the field, and very unfortunate indeed for Stevens, but he is gone. And into the pits comes Wayne Hutchison. That's the Porsche. So Wayne Hutchison comes into the pits. He's in front of Barry DiMarzo, but it's not going to stay that way for too long unless DiMarzo pits on the same lap. Meanwhile, we've got Angelidis having come into the pits from what was third position. Now, Kirby is back up to third after his pit stop, and De Bruyn is coming in. So the race leader decides to peel off and make his pit stop. That is just a couple of laps after Kirby, but I don't think he's going to gain the upper hand over Kirby. I'm fairly sure Kirby is actually back out on track. It says on the timing screen there that he's still in the pit lane. I don't think he is. I think he's back on track. And Angelidis has picked up a penalty. Now, that could well be for speeding in pit road.
That's crushing. How Kirby is out on track now. He is not in pits, so I'm not sure what that was.
Yeah, I assumed as much. So it was a slight correction of the timing screen needed. There is Dan Kirby. And with De Bruyn in pit road, Lane has taken the lead for the moment in the Manta Squid Porsche. But here comes Dan Kirby, and he will fly past the pits, past Wood to De Bruyn, and move back into, well, the provisional lead. But of course, it's second position at the moment because he's got to wait for Lane to make his own pit stop. Kirby comes through, and there's no issue at all. He is going to overtake De Bruyn for second position and get back where he belongs as one of the BMWs makes its way out of the pit lane. It's no sweat at all for Dan Kirby. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah, Dan Kirby's got everything going his way right now. He's got complete control of that Peugeot. And it just seems like the night's not really affecting him in any way. He's just off, you know, on a Sunday drive here. Obviously, right now he's provisionally in first place, actually in second place currently at the moment, but he's just running a really smooth, confident race. We see Lane out there about 38 seconds ahead, but Lane still has to pit, so I think Kirby is just able to really kind of just relax at this point in the race. Obviously, the race is far from over, but he doesn't have too much stress going on.
Overton in pit road. Dahlgren has a penalty as well now. That's not good news. Meanwhile, Timon Suvic is a full lap ahead of Wayne Hutchison. That is largely down to the fact that Hutchison has pitted and Suvic has not. I spoke too soon, because in comes Timon Suvic. So he is now taking his pit stop. And that is perfectly timed as far as Timon Suvic's strategy is concerned. There is Kirby, who is in net first position. We say that because, of course, he has already made his pit stop, and Lane has just come in for his. So the leaders in the hypercar categories are now both coming down pit road. Or they've actually stopped in pit road, I should say. But Dan Kirby in the CMS Pro Peugeot, the former champion, is about to continue his epic run and has taken back the lead. An hour 37 to go, and Dan Kirby is looking strong.
Yeah, this is a great race statement here for the first race of the season for Daniel Kirby. Definitely out here to prove a point. Able to make it very confidently so far in this race. We'll see if he's able to, you know, continue that dominance throughout the entire evening. We still have about an hour and 36 minutes left to go. So still a little too early, but starting to get pretty close to the halfway mark here. So far, so good for Daniel Kirby.
So a very interesting challenge for the contenders as they continue to push their way forward. But Kirby is your leader. Smith is in second. Lane, having come into the pits, is going to concede third position. Now, interestingly, one thing we need to pick up on after the pit stops is that Sellers has actually leapfrogged his teammate De Bruyn. So De Bruyn is now behind Sellers. So that's a significant one as far as the BMW pair are concerned. And that is Brad Sellers. There he is. He's actually 2 seconds ahead of his teammate. Now, I don't know whether they swapped positions in the pit stop tactically or whether Sellers just did a better job down pit road than De Bruyn did. But certainly those two have now swapped position.
And another thing I want to point out for the GT3 Pro class, Katarinakis starting to get out to a little bit of a lead on King there. We saw King really holding back Katarinakis, but now that Katarinakis up into first place there, added about 2 seconds since the last time I looked there. The gap is about 3.6 to 4 seconds, depending on what part of the track they're in. And yeah, definitely looking like Katarinakis is just kind of, you know, taking advantage of that opportunity that he had from the Porsche of King getting loose there, and off to the races he goes. We got a couple drivers here that still have not pitted. Smith is one of those that haven't pitted yet. So we ride along here with Bradley Sellers. Sellers in third place. His teammate Wouter De Bruyn in fourth place. And then we're going to jump back here. This is Ross Smith coming into his pit stop right now. So number 2, Ross Smith, one of the last to stay out, coming in for his pit. It looks like we're going to follow here, Ross Smith here, but let's go ahead and see if we can jump back to some live action here as we follow along with Daniel Kirby. Kirby coming through some traffic here. It looks like he's trying to get around. That looks like a Mercedes there. GT3 car nonetheless. And I'm going to go ahead and bring James Parfit into the booth. James, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm all right. I'm fighting fires in the background. We've got some great racing going on currently at the moment. Now, the interesting thing that I wanted to point out as well was when Suvic went into the pits, he was actually second overall. He was second overall across the whole of the hypercars. So at that moment he pitted, he was second. So that's really going to be interesting to see how Suvic's going to get on here as well. He's got an absolute age gap over Hutchinson of about a good 17 seconds. The car are fairly spread out at this part of the racetrack, but as we know with endurances and short endurances like this, they will come back together at the end. It kind of happens after the pit stops. They all start spreading out a little bit and then they will come back together. So we are going to keep an eye on some of the battles that we are expecting to materialize. The Katarinakis and the King battle, I'm hoping they'll come back together as well, because that was brewing absolutely nicely as well. And I want to see how Suvic gets on and how far up through the actual Hypercar AMS the pros he can get, because currently he's 5th overall and he is currently ahead of 6, no fewer than 6 pros there. So Suvik is doing an absolutely smashing job here in the Hypercar AMS, and you know, could be one for a pro next season, Michael. You never know.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely got to take a look at that. Suvik is having a great race. We saw the same thing there momentarily before the incident that put him out of the race from Stevens there in the Mustang GT3. Definitely very interesting to see how these drivers are, you know, kind of suited to their ranks, to their levels. We'll see if we have to make any adjustments. I say but we'll see if the league has to make any adjustments within within the drivers. You know, whether they're pros that should be AMs or AMs that should be pros. You know, just tweak their rankings a little bit just to see how, you know, everything goes. But this is still early in the season. These are brand new cars, brand new season, a brand new year. It's exciting to see, you know, just how well developed this racing league is and this mod is. And it's only, you know, the beginning of the year. So it's going to be very nice to see, you know, how this league matures throughout the season. You know, how these drivers kind of mature throughout the year. And, you know, it's right now we see Daniel Kirby is just absolutely dominating out there. But that might be track specific. I know he's a previous champion here, so he's definitely got the ability, he's got the skills, got the knowledge to do so. But we'll see who else is able to make a name for themselves this season.
Absolutely. I'm going to bring Jack back into the booth with you. Jack, welcome back.
Thank you very much, James. I tell you what, when you have a race as good as this one, you do not spend long in the bathroom. Dan Kirby having an amazing run, 34 seconds clear of Brad Sellers, but still every opportunity for these races to change hands. Kirby from Sellers, then De Bruin. Lane still confident in 4th position in front of Hall and Chen. What's happened to Angelidis? Well, obviously he had to take that penalty, so he's now dropped back. As out of the pits goes Alec King. Now, this is, of course, the GT3 victory that we're watching essentially being battled for, because Alec King is going to get out onto the circuit again, possibly in front of John Mayer in the M4, but it's possible that he'll end up behind him. So he comes out of pit road and gets his way back into position once again. So Alec King gets out onto the circuit once more. And Mike, this is obviously where he's going to have to try and now pitch his way back in without having lost too much momentum, and also try and pick up that rhythm again on fresh tires.
Yeah, but the problem that he's going to face right now is he was already starting to lose that momentum. He was already starting to lose a few seconds there to Katernakis.
Mike, he's got a penalty. I just saw it come up on the screen. He's got a penalty.
Oh, Alec King, everything is just kind of snowballing for him now. He lost the lead. He lost a few seconds. Now he's got a penalty. Now, do we know that penalty was for speeding in the pits, I would assume? Almost
certainly. Yeah, almost certainly a pit lane infringement. And that is just devastating for Alec King when everything was going perfectly. But this is what Katerinakis is good at. He just intimidates his opposition until they're the ones that make the error. And Alec King has learned that about Katerinakis the hard way today.
Yeah, I see. You brought up the Intimidator earlier, Dale Earnhardt, and that is like the perfect kind of scenario there for Katerinakis, the perfect comparison there, because he is just absolutely just keeping a cool head and just intimidating everybody, you know, making other people make mistakes without touching them, obviously. Absolutely stunning drive so far by Katerinakis.
Yeah, he's really in the zone. He's got 20 seconds on Gutierrez in the Mercedes, but to be fair to him, that's not really looking to be his opposition at this point. He's just settling into a nice rhythm now, and he'll know, obviously, that King has got a penalty. I'm sure someone on the team will be able to get the message to him, unless he's just going to settle in and get into his rhythm. Maybe his crew may not want to give him a message, because they do have members of the team that will sit by and just let their team know occasionally, especially for the big long races. You want to have somebody who's there in your ear just giving you a little piece of information here and there, and they may well let him know King's got a penalty, by the way, so you can just chill out. And Katerinakis will just be thinking about his rhythm now. He's just there tucked up behind the Lamborghini, I think that is, just in front of him there. Yes, it is the Huracan that's just in front of him. He doesn't need to rush getting past him at all. He's going left side, but he's going right side, but this is a little bit of a headache because the Lamborghini's not exactly being particularly helpful. He finally brakes incredibly early, but Katerinakis, he brakes quite late because he's obviously on the wrong side of the road for where you get the most purchase through the braking zone. So that's what you risk when you come off the main racing line.
And we saw the LMDH cars make that move earlier. I believe it was Sellers that made the move. I can't exactly, coming on the outside to try to get back into third place there. But yeah, no, these cars are definitely having to make a challenge. With multi-class racing, there's no shortness of drama at all, whether it's the pros, the AMs, the GT3s, the LMDHs, the Hypercars.
So it was speeding on pit road for Alec King. That's the reason he got the penalty. Obviously, that sense of urgency to try and make up for the time lost earlier on. Very easily done, and I'm afraid the resulting penalty is the consequence, and that's a real shame for Alec King and the Shade Tree Porsche. Not really in the position to take the victory again just yet then, because obviously he'll need to serve that penalty for speeding in pit road. So difficult, and I bet you that will be 1, maybe 2 kilometers over the limit. It won't be by much at all as Kirby storms his way through. No problems at all for him. But it's interesting, isn't it, that Kirby is now the Lone Ranger for the CMS Pro team up front. Nobody else is really with him from that squad. We've obviously already had Zolman gone. And where's Uyan? Well, he's outside the top 6 now.
Unfortunate, because they had a strong qualifying run. They had 3 cars in the top 6 there, including a 1-2 with Kirby and Uyan. Uyan had a bad start, was able to kind of move himself back up, but now has completely fallen off here outside of the top 6. But Kirby keeping his head down, able to really fit. Yeah, that was a tight squeeze through.
That was 3 wide very nearly coming off that turn, and John Uyan is going to make his way past the Hypercar Am that he was he was lapping there, and John Uyan has actually fallen. Oh, he was actually passing for track position, and John Uyan runs wide. He runs wide through turn 1. He manages to catch it, but that just shows you the difference in precision between Kirby and Uyan. Uyan got exactly the same equipment, but Kirby's a bit like a slot car at the moment. He's on his Scalextric track in his attic upstairs. John Uyan is currently on roller skates at a wedding.
Yeah, I definitely did not realize that we had switched there for a second. I thought it was Kirby that was losing it through turn 1 there. About to have a heart attack for Kirby. He got a 34-second lead. Don't want to be making mistakes like that, but obviously it was for Uyan, falling all the way back into 9th place. Definitely not the race that he had envisioned. I assume that much for sure. Cutting down into 1 minute and 25 minutes left. An hour and 25 minutes.
This is the kind of problem as well. He just caught the Ferrari at exactly the wrong point on the circuit. As he came out of the radius, the Ferrari went high side, and so did he. So obviously he has to get off the throttle rather than nudge the back bumper of the car in front. You just got to time these things right. You've got to pitch it perfect. And unfortunately, Kirby has been far more efficient at doing that than Uyan. Uyan now 14th overall. He's obviously had a couple of problems in the race. There's still plenty of time to get it back. And looking at the straight line speed and the pace of the CMS Pro Peugeot, John Uyan is not a poor driver. He can get himself back together again. He can find his way back through. He could still make top 5 overall here easily with the time we've got left. But obviously this first half of the race is one to forget for John Uyan, and he's going to want to charge his way slightly further forward. There on the left side is the graphic as far as the car is concerned, so that you can see which car is doing what at the moment. It's Acura's leading 3 out of 4 at the moment. Peugeot NX8 is currently leading overall in the hands of Dan Kirby, and then a pair of BMWs. And in that Hypercar Pro category, it is Porsche's Cadillac Porsche once again. But it's Acura leading the AM category for Timon Suvic, and then Porsche, Acura, BMW, and a pair of Caddies. And then finally in the GT3s, well, it's Acura's leading both categories at the moment, courtesy of Katarinakis and the pro leader, the AM leader, who was at one stage Stephen King, but now, of course, it is Stuart Barge. I meant to say, why did I say Stephen King? He's the horror guy. It's a very different chap. Matthews.
Throw me off a little bit here.
Absolutely. I'm sorry. Trust me, more obscure film references will come as it gets further into the night. I'm going to knock out the entire Jim Carrey archive before the night is done. Anyway, Katarinakis and Barge are the current leaders in the GT3 categories, Pro and Am, and Kirby and Suvic are the Hypercar category leaders. So Acura is leading everything except the race overall.
Absolutely here. The Peugeot is the only one that's not an Acura up top there, but Acura having a very solid run here tonight at the Daytona 2.4 hours. Really impressive here for a lot of these drivers up front, but obviously Daniel Kirby up front here has really become the driver of the day for me so far. Sellers is starting to make up a little bit of time. He was, I think he's made up about 5 seconds in the last few laps there. I'm not sure if Daniel Kirby's hit some traffic here, but Sellers is starting to make up a little bit of time. The only other thing that I would say is I'm not sure that Katarinakis has pitted yet, so that's going to be something that we're going to have to keep an eye on.
It's a good point, actually. And Katarinakis has not only not pitted, but he's left it incredibly deep into the stint, hasn't he? Because we saw King come into the pits the first time round. He's now come back into the pits for his penalty. But actually, Katarinakis has gone way further into the stint than King. So a very interesting change in the dynamic of the pit stops then between Vasilis Katarinakis and his opponents. And even Gutierrez in the Mercedes has gone quite long in as well, because that's 23 seconds deficit. It hasn't really changed that much. As into the pits comes Stephen Miller in the Speed Details McLaren.
Yeah, it's definitely going to change things up as we get a little further into this race here. Katarinakis on a completely different pit stop than King, who obviously got that penalty. So I don't think that Katarinakis is going to be thinking too much about King any longer. Alec King, unfortunately, having a few mistakes there, sounds like, on pit road. But yeah, Katarinakis not pitting yet. It might have been a strategy that he was working on before he got around the Porsche. But now it seems like he's kind of in a league of his own there in the pro category. He doesn't really have anybody to concern about.
But one thing I did notice about Katarinakis when he came through the bus stop that time round, as Barge comes into the pits for his scheduled pit stop, there's Ed Jones, who is in the Ferrari trying to chase him down for the AM lead. One thing I did spot for Katarinakis going through the bus stop, the back end starting to travel just ever so slightly more loosely than before. So that gives us the first indication that the pit stop isn't too far away now for Katarinakis, because the back end starting to get just that little bit more slippy. And obviously, the more that those tyres wear, they become like treacle. You're really trying to get a little bit more grip into the tyres. In comes Ed Jones in the Ferrari just as Stuart Barge leaves. So Barge is actually in seventh heaven right now. He doesn't even lose the lead through his pit stop phase. It's one of those rare races where you really can say the leader in each class is definitely the driver of the day in each category. Although I want to give a little bit of a shout out to a couple of drivers in that mix. Sellers has done a sensational job in Hypercar, second position when he was down in P4 at the start. How he muscled his way up into second position, first taking on Uyan around the outside, and then basically hoodwinking his teammate De Bruyn, and now he's extended that gap to 5 seconds. Kirby was expected to do well. Brad Sellers really has been the standout performer in Hypercar for me so far.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with you there. He's had a great start to the race. He's been very confident, and then
just as I say that, I can't believe it.
Wall, though. He's going to lose a position to De Bruyn, but he was able to keep it out of the wall, and he's able to get back on track.
That is the worst commentator's curse I have ever inflicted on anyone. Brad, I am so sorry. I owe you 17 points. My goodness, Brad Sellers just drops it on the way through turn one. He just got a little bit squirrely in the braking zone, and it's so easy to wash out there. He had 5 seconds advantage. He's now got 3 deficit, so he recovered remarkably quickly. But Brad Sellers, I am so sorry.
There's multiple turns on this track, on this course layout that are sneakily challenging. You know, the horseshoe, the first hairpin, you kind of have to deal with it a different sort of way. But that first turn, coming from the banking, coming from the straightaway, and then down, you're trail braking throughout the whole way. It's kind of hard to really spot your true braking point. It's a challenging corner, and then it's so easy to get that rear end loose. And then we see Bradley Sellers, you know, losing not only that spot, but a few seconds to his teammate there, De Bruyn. We'll see if he's able to recover from this and move back up. We are probably going to see another pit stop here at some point between these hypercars, but yeah, that's going to be a tough challenge here for Sellers to, you know, shake that off and get back on track here and try to chase down his teammate for the third time.
It's a very good point, actually, because this is the thing we see a lot in endurance racing at this level in esports, is that mistakes breed mistakes. Once you make one, you're desperately trying to make up for the time that you lost, and then another mistake comes, and then another, and then another. So it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, we're watching the battle for 4th position in GT Pro. This is Alec King trying to close down on Ikazo. Now, Ikazo has just made the pit stop and has slotted back into 4th position. There is Luciano Ikazo in the Bentley, running in 4th place. And into the pits has come Gutierrez. So these guys are set to move into 3rd and 4th place. Now watch Ikazo through the bus stop.
That Bentley just eats the curves like
so
nothing.
Smooth. Yeah, I mean, do you know what? The GTs, I don't know if that's a GT thing or whether that's just a Bentley thing, but that was as smooth as a penny farthing on Main Street. That is absolutely beautiful. And in comes Katarinakis. There you go. There comes the leader, finally making his pit stop. So, obviously, he's going to lose the lap lead that he's got over everybody. Gutierrez rejoins, still in second place. So, Gant is 17 seconds back. So, this is now no longer an effective second place. This is actually second place for Johnny Gutierrez in the AMG. Fabulous car, fabulous drive, and so far, all he has to do now is get relatively close to Katarinakis. Katarinakis has no pressure in the lead of this at the moment, sat in pit road. He can just take stock of the situation, read the situation, and just bide his time. He can even afford to lose a couple of seconds in pit road. Not that he'll want to, but he's certainly very much in control of things. Meanwhile, how are the spread of things? Barge has just come into the pits, I do believe, in GT3 AM. Oh no, of course, we saw him come into the pits. He has now rejoined in the HPD Acura, and he is about half a minute in front of Limos, who we saw earlier on. Luis Limos, who was battling away with Eugene Mazur. Mazur has actually had a bit of a difficult race since that point and actually slipped back. The only driver in that collection of drivers now that hasn't made a pit stop appears to be Mountjoy. So Mountjoy is there or thereabouts in that mix. It's showing that Mountjoy hasn't pitted. I would have thought almost certainly by now he actually has. But Tom Mountjoy in the Corvette, if he hasn't pitted, well, he's just like the Duracell rabbit at the moment. He just keeps on going on and just continuing to pound around the circuit, trying to find a little bit more time and trying to find that little bit more exertion through the corners. But if that isn't a car that's pitted yet, its days in third position are certainly numbered.
Got a question here. Just a moment ago, you had those pit stops up, and it showed De Bruin as one of the drivers that hasn't pit yet. Now, I'm pretty sure we saw De Bruin pit around the same time Sellers did, so maybe that was just a glitch on the timing tower. But just wanted to confirm that. Do we know that De Bruin has for sure pitted?
Absolutely, he has. Yeah, De Bruin has definitely pitted in. He was actually not one of the first drivers to pit, because Sellers was actually the first one of the drivers to pit, but he certainly made the pit stop, I think, a lap and a half, 2 laps before Kirby did. De Bruin came in, so that could well be the outcome for Tom Mountjoy. Maybe he has also pitted, and it's just a glitch on the timing. We certainly know that Barge is no longer in pit road, and it seems to think he is, but that's not the case anymore. Katarinakis has got out of the pits 8 seconds ahead of Gutierrez, so this GT battle ain't done yet, boys and girls. There is still plenty of life left in it, and Gutierrez is not going to have a decent... Oh, well, having said that, in comes Mountjoy, so maybe that is his first pit stop, and he has literally left it till the late Middle Ages in relation to the way everybody else has come in to make his pit stop. So into the pits comes Mountjoy from third place. Miller will get through, Mazur will get through, and so will Bowders. So no problems at all for those three to elevate themselves up further forward. So maybe Mountjoy really was the last of the late pit stoppers. He was clearly waiting for Guido to get into position. Then Kirby, De Bruin, Sellers, that's the top 3 in Hypercar. Lane Hall and Chen in your top 6. Suvic is 40 seconds clear of Hutchison in Hypercar Ram. Enrique is in third position ahead of DeMarzo and Benchka, with no Miller, unfortunately, having had all sorts of flotsam and jetsam around him. Katarinakis is only 8 seconds ahead of Gutierrez, and the gap is falling. So that race battle isn't done yet, and Alec King is still within about half a minute of the lead. So there is a 5-way battle for the victory in GT3. This is the closest race we've got on track right now. While there's half a minute between first and second in Hypercar Pro and AM, there's half a minute between the top 5 cars in GT3. This race is just getting going.
Yeah, and I think we should jump over, if we can, James, to King and Echazo. I think that battle for 4th place is going to be getting very spicy here for a moment. We see Echazo right there in the Bentley. We saw him go through the bus stop, absolutely ate the curbs like it was nothing. But we know the acceleration and the handling of this Porsche is definitely, on par with the best of them here. So it's going to be interesting to see how long it takes for King to not only get back on the back of Echazo here, but if he's able to quickly make this move and get a little further up the field, maybe he's able to catch on to Gant, get into 3rd place here before the end of the race.
You know that it's a really good and intense esports motor race of endurance and speed and skill and stamina. when you look through the comments and there hasn't been one for half an hour because everybody's so glued to the screen. They cannot be bothered to type at this point. It's so intense. Icazo trying to stretch away from King. 1.4 seconds between them. Katarinakis is starting to eke out a bit of a gap again on Gutierrez. 10 seconds is now the gap between those leaders. But Icazo has got a little bit of a headache coming up because he's got the battling hypercars coming through. He's got De Bruyne and Sellers. Sellers has caught back up to De Bruyne again. So look at that. Through the traffic, Sellers has got back on the horse and started to charge his way onto the tail of his teammate. So once again, despite that spin, Sellers easily the standout performer in hypercar because even when the chips are down, he's still fighting fit to try and get himself back into contention.
Yeah, Sellers actually has an opportunity here if we see something happen to Daniel Kirby to pull over Verstappen. Pull a full 360 there. He's able to keep it out of the wall. Oh, he getting real loose.
That was close. De Bruyne nearly washed out the same way Sellers did.
Those BMWs do not like turn one.
No, they do not. The trouble is, they're pretty quick in the corners themselves, but on the brakes, they don't have the strongest car. They have a reasonable set of brakes, but they're definitely not the best performers in the braking zones. So De Bruyne was very lucky there that he didn't wash out the same way Sellers did, and as a result, Sellers is right back on his gearbox.
Yeah, I think you're going to see these two drivers, these two BMWs, really start to mess with that brake bias there, because that's one of the things that you can do while you're in car to really affect the setup of your car. And it seems like the braking on turn one there, that trail braking corner, it seems like the braking is really becoming an issue for these two BMWs. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, see how this race goes. But to your point, Sellers absolutely making up for that mistake he had, fighting his way back to try to catch up to his teammate here, and gone from 3 seconds after the spin to half a second here. A couple laps later, he's really making up time for that spin, and I'd be surprised to see him not be able to get past De Bruyne within the next 4 or 5 laps.
But he's got to be very careful how he chooses to do it, because that's not just anybody he's trying to overtake for second place, that's his teammate. The last thing you want is ignominy and bitter feeling between the guy you've got to work with for the rest of the year, because that's where enemies can start to be created. You just don't want to take your teammate out. It can really cause friction as De Bruyne and Sellers battle away for second position. It looks as though Kirby already has one hand on the victory. Mind you, we've said that before in CMS in the last 12 months, and all of a sudden it changes hands. But Sellers is only 0.3 of a second behind his teammate De Bruyne, and it looks as though they're the two that are going to duel for the runner-up spot. They've got traffic in front of them. De Bruyne is going to commit to the inside. Sellers can afford to be a little bit more patient. He's going to take his time. Good radius out of the turn, good throttle application too. De Bruyne has to hesitate for a split second, and Sellers suddenly finds himself spitting his teammates' exhaust fumes. That was close. He just about saves it.
That was tough there. That was coming through with that Porsche. Just got a little bit loose coming through there. Not a great spot to make that overtake, but I guess he really didn't feel like he had a choice there. He's trying to stick with his teammate, and things almost got really sideways really quickly.
I mean, that's when your heart rate goes from 110 BPM to 140, isn't it? In that split second, you just go, no, don't hit him. It was so tight for Brad Sellers. He just about nailed it on the way out of the turn. And so now back on the banking once again, just hunting down Wouter De Bruyne out front in second position. But Sellers just waiting for his moment. Just following in his wheel tracks. Yellow in sector 2, apparently. This is how tight it is for De Bruyne. There's his teammate Sellers right in behind him. Will he pitch for the move? He's got to be patient. He's going to wait. He's going to wait and not wait for an opportunity for De Bruyne to go wide. They both go a little bit wide, but they get a tighter run through. And De Bruyne is just able to fend him off for another lap.
Yeah, these two boys are probably overthinking turn one a little bit. They both had mistakes there, but as we see, there we go.
There's the move. Sellers is going to get the opportunity while De Bruyne is going to be held up by the back marker. Opportunistic as you like from Brad Sellers. De Bruyne overshoots. Sellers gets the run, and De Bruyne has to let his teammate go.
It was an excellent move there by Sellers, using that GT3 Mercedes to not only make the move, but kind of stick it to his teammate there a little bit. He got off there, hit the wall. There's definitely going to be damage there, and that is a complete lapse of concentration for De Bruyne. probably a little bit of anxiety or being a little upset with himself, and definitely a huge mistake there.
Yeah, that is just frustration bubbling over for Wouter de Bruin. He knows that he let that mistake happen. And what did I say before? Mistakes breed mistakes. De Bruin has let that opportunity open up to let his teammate go by, and trying to get back on terms with him, he's the one who's dropped the ball. And that's a rare mistake for Wouter de Bruin. Last year in the Pagani Imola, he was pretty concrete everywhere you went. But he really wants to prove to everybody that in the Rookie Monsters, this is his squad. And unfortunately for him, Brad Sellers has got another script in his back pocket.
Brad Sellers definitely taking advantage of that mistake there. Do want to jump back here to the GT3 Pros just for a moment here. Katarinakis basically doubling his lead there on Gutierrez. It was down to 7 seconds. Now it's around 13 seconds. So looks like Katarinakis is back in the flow of things as we see a couple GT3 cars battling it out here with the Hypercar in the middle. That Porsche getting really loose.
Yeah, that's Bowders and Jones. Bowders and Jones having a nice little tussle for position. Miller and Mazur are having a good battle over third place as well. So Bowders and Jones, this is the age-old rivalry. Porsche versus Ferrari. Doesn't get much more legendary than that, ladies and gents. There's Steve Miller in the Speed Details McLaren. And he is trying to get well clear of Eugene Mazur in the Pazuzu Porsche. And certainly for Jones, he has sensed an opportunity here on Bowders. And let's not forget that Jones has already had a bit of a topsy-turvy race so far. He's run towards the front. He's had his difficulties. He's stayed out of trouble on the most part. But now he's got Bowders well within his sights. There's a Hypercar in between them as well. That's going to make things a little bit easier to try and pitch in an opportunity on Bowders. But the Hypercar is able to get through without Bowders being impeded. So Jones not really able to take an opportunity there. But let's ride on board with the Ferrari. One of the most glorious noises in GT racing. If Mantovani had composed engine notes, he would have made the noise of the Ferrari 488. It's absolute biblical stuff.
Absolutely amazing car there. I do want to just kind of piggyback on that. You said Ed Jones had a little bit of an up and down race. I think Ed Jones was the Ferrari that we saw that Kirby earlier on almost got into the back end of trying to make it through traffic.
Yes, it was. Absolutely spot on. Oh, Henrique has come into the pits as well. That's pit stop number 2. So that's with an hour and 6 to go. Now, I'm trying to...
Pushing it really close there.
Yeah, I'm trying to do the quick math. With an hour and 6 to go, would he need to stop again? I think that might just be okay to... no, I think he's going to have to take another pit stop there, isn't he? With an hour and 6 to go, I think he might just have... This is the difficulty, because it's one time on fuel and tyres. It's in real time. Compared to the accelerated daytime system, I should say. It's hard to predict, but I think they may need to take a splash and dash with about 15, 16 minutes or so to go if that is where Henrique is starting to make a pit stop. There might be one or two drivers who might be able to lift and coast and try and save another 10 minutes, because ultimately, drivers want to try and force the issue to try and get one pit stop left out of this race rather than 2. But for Henrique, that looks to me like he's going to have to take 2.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be asking a little bit too much for a lot of these drivers to try to one-stop it. I believe we're going to see everybody, have to force this second pit stop, obviously, but you're going to see a couple cars that are going to make the mistake that Enrique is kind of...
In GT, I think you can manage one more. Oh, a spin around! A spin around there, and there's nowhere for Dahlgren to go. Did he hit him? Goodness me.
I think he got away from it.
Oh, Magnus Dahlgren just about avoiding it. Oh, that was very tight indeed for Magnus Dahlgren. So it was Guillermo Benchka, the Stuart Haas driver in the Cadillac, that ended up spinning in front of Magnus Dahlgren. We're going to see it again. So Benchka spins it, and look, Dahlgren, oh, he was a lucky boy, wasn't he? Stood on the brake pedal, no problem, can get out of it. That was tight.
Back live here with Benke. If Benke hadn't pulled forward there, I'm not sure if Dahlgren was going to be able to miss him there. It looked like Benke kind of pulling forward there really helped keep him out of trouble.
Yes, indeed. He was lucky there. He was quite fortuitous. Now, we've got a great battle developing for third place in the GT category. We've got Gant 3 seconds ahead of Icazo, who is only a second and a half ahead of King. So it's really starting to tighten up for the third spot on the podium in the GTs. And all it's going to take is one error in judgment. Meanwhile, Wouter de Bruin has started to close up on his teammate Sellers once again. But there is Brandon Gant in the BMW M4 for SRA Unity. And if you look back, you're going to get to see Icazo in the Bentley. There he is. So there's not much in it at all between Gant and Icazo. There is the Bentley. And look back again, and there's Alec King. So there's not much between these three cars in the GT squabble. So this is a very tall order now for Gant to hang on to. But then we've seen Gant in tighter spots than this. So this is going to be a fascinating duel for the third spot on the podium. And obviously they're not wheel to wheel yet. But with Icazo 2.5 back from Gant, but ahead of King, it's very, very tight indeed as we go into the final hour very soon indeed of this Daytona 2.4. Yellow in sector 2.
Just to point out, King was on the back of Icazo, so he's lost a little bit of time. So Icazo is making some moves here. It looks like he's kind of gaining up on Gant, but King falling off pace a little bit the last few laps.
We're going to see again and have a look at the Magnus Dahlgren moment. So Magnus Dahlgren's come out of the pit lane. And what has happened to Magnus Dahlgren on pit exit? So he's come out of the pits and gone straight towards the braking zone for the hairpin. And radius is taken quite nicely. Apparently Magnus Dahlgren has been off the road somewhere, which is why we tried to pick it up, but that's obviously separate to the incident that we saw of him trying to get out of the way of Guillermo Benchka. So obviously Magnus Dahlgren still ploughing his trade. He's not on the leaderboard at the moment because he's down, and that into the pits comes the Rookie Monsters BMW, and it's Sellers who comes in first. Now again, this is the battle for second position, and that would suggest to me that lift and coast is not quite going to be enough to make it one stop. I think it's going to be two.
Yeah, I think these cars are going to be forced to make that second stop here. And
but it's going to be late. That we have to make that point. It's going to be quite late in the race. They're only going to have like 15, 16 minutes left, and they're going to have to do a quick splash and dash. That could make things very spicy.
It's going to make things spicy, especially because they're not going to be able to take the opportunity to change tires again. You know, they're going to have to keep that old rubber when they do their splash and dash, because they can't waste too much time on pit lane. So that's going to make things even more complicated once they get towards the end of the race. You know, with those morning temperatures coming into play, the air temperature is going to change. You know, we're in the middle of the night right now, but with about an hour left, that still gives us another 6 hours of, you know, our 24-hour clock here, give or take. So you're going to deal with a lot of temperature changes with the track. That's going to affect the way the tires handle. The fact that you're going to have to almost one and a quarter stint these tires, that's going to throw, you know, a lot of differences into these cars, you know, long-term goals here with this race, how they're able to deal with their setup. Things are going to be very complicated the further we get into this race here. With an hour left, things are really going to start heating up here.
Now, sunrise is, by my math, in about 10 minutes or so time. We've got an hour to go. So Tom Lane in the Manta Squid Porsche, half a minute back from Dan Kirby, who is now in pit road. Dan Kirby is in pit road. So that's an important one. And so too is Brian Hall in the Hall Brothers machine. So there is Dan Kirby in pit road in the CMS Pro Peugeot. And there is Brian Hall as we watch Wouter de Bruin, who is now the ipso facto race leader for the time being. He's obviously got to wait until his own pit stop. Kirby has slipped to third position overall behind Lane now. There's Suvic. Timon Suvic in the Acura as he works his way past Dahlgren in the ME racing machine. And Timon Suvic, I have to say, is one of the only drivers in this entire race who I haven't seen put a wheel wrong. He's just been absolutely fluid throughout. He's been right in the middle of the gaggle pretty much since the start, Timon Suvic. And he's just kept the ARX-06 pretty much to what it can do. He hasn't overstretched it. He's just kept it nice and calm.
Yeah, he's having a great race here. Third overall in the standings. Got himself in the top spot of the Hypercar AM class. 55 seconds ahead of second place in the AM class. So definitely been a solid race here for him. Suvic letting another car get by a little bit there, but definitely out of the race leaders right now, Timon Suvic definitely having one of the best races out of everybody here.
But interesting, who's in second place now in the Hypercar RAM category? It's Hutchison. He's been able to make up a little bit of headway compared to his opposition. Now, Henrique, of course, made his pit stop, so Hutchison hasn't made his yet. So by the time that shakes up, what's the betting that we're going to get Hutchison versus Henrique round 3? I have a feeling those two are going to have yet more to do with each other on the racetrack.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. I think those two are definitely kind of destined to meet up at least one more time before the end of this race. And to your point, as far as the GT3 cars go, Kataranaka's really pushed his first pit stop as far as he could. I think he pitted around like an hour and 16 minutes left, so that would put him at about 60 minutes. He might be able to push all the way to the end there.
I just saw the BMW go off the road. That's Gant. Gant was in third position in the class. He's now dropped behind Icarzo. So Icarzo's gone through. Gant has dropped to fourth position. There is Gant recovering. But look who's right behind him. Check it out. It's Alec King in the Porsche. He's only about a second away. There he is. So Alec King in the Shade Tree Porsche suddenly realizes that he's only about 6 seconds off the podium again. So that penalty that he got for speeding in pit road earlier on is not necessarily going to be game over as far as he's concerned. So Alec King still has a great shot. We ride on board with King. There goes Kirby. Flies past. So
Alec King definitely still has an opportunity here at a podium spot. All over the back here of Gant, and it looks like King is starting to kind of feel that Porsche come back to him. He had a great start to the race. Obviously, he had the penalty, the issue on pit lane, but he's really allowing that car to come back to him. He's keeping his head down, and I think, as I say that, Porsche becomes a Porsche.
Do you know what? I kind of saw that one happening on the way in because he suddenly realized how close he could get to Gant. And I think he just had eyes wider than his stomach there. He just felt he could gain a little bit more from that gap than he was actually able to sustain. I really want to see that again because you can kind of see it on turn-in. You could see it with his hands. He just got a little bit greedy in the braking zone and just thought, I can eat up the road about 4 or 5 car lengths here and I can really get on him. But by that point, you're carrying far too much speed into that first corner, and that's where the car loses grip. So unfortunately there for Alec King, yes, he was faster. Yes, he had a better car, but he just got a tiny bit too greedy. And I think he'll know that that was the mistake that he really couldn't have afforded to make. But that one is, unfortunately, all on Alec King.
Yeah, especially with these Porsches. When you make a mistake in a Porsche, the car lets you know immediately. Like, you know what you did wrong immediately if you make a mistake in a Porsche. 9 times out of 10, that's what's going to happen here. And I feel like, if we go back to our little cheat sheet here, they have a nice description of all the GT3 cars, just a little glimpse here. But just to direct your attention down here, the Porsche 911 GT3, it's little... Oh, sorry about that. But the corners well until it doesn't. And I think that makes the most sense. That is the perfect characterization for a Porsche.
Yeah, it's one of those.
Well until it doesn't.
It kind of has a tantrum mid-corner sometimes, doesn't it? The Porsche just kind of thinks, do you know what? You've flirted with this disaster too much. I'm going to chuck you into the scenery. And Alec King, unfortunately, a victim of that. Meanwhile, though, Gant has actually pitted, so that's elevated Alec King to 4th place. It's elevated Icarzo to 3rd. But it's a little bit late in the day for King to be thinking about that because Icarzo is now 15 seconds up the road. It's a real shame, actually, because that battle for King had a lot of legs to it coming. I mean, he can still fight back. He's still got 55 minutes left of the race. It isn't done by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a bit like being Bill Murray at the moment. It's another Groundhog Day where he's got to just try and catch up to the guys in front of him all over again. He's just got to keep building, got to keep pushing.
Yeah, that's been two major mistakes that were complete mental errors here by King.
It's kind of reminding me of that Greek god that spent the eternity in hell having to push that boulder up the hill, and then within the last moment, the boulder just rolled down the hill, so he's got to get up the next day and do it all over again. It's kind of like that for Alec King at the moment. Every time he gets close to his opponent, something goes wrong.
Yeah, that car definitely just, he's got it under control when it's all about himself, but as soon as he starts getting into any sort of pressure, something happens there. And like you said, he's just going to have to keep fighting up that hill, but I think it's going to be a little bit too late now. 53 minutes left in the race. So we see him getting really loose there at the bus stop.
I mean, that's very nearly triggering another pit stop, isn't it? The way that the tyres are starting to scream at him there. 24 seconds is the deficit for Katarinakis to be pulled away from Gutierrez. Picasso is 20 seconds off that. Then King, another 17. Meyer, another 49. And Gant, after his pit stop, is 13 back from Meyer. Pit stop for De Bruyn. Pit stop for Wouter De Bruyn. So he has come in. Now, this is going to be a critical one, because where is Wouter De Bruyn going to filter out in comparison to his teammate? Overton's coming to the pits as well. Now, Kirby's going to fly past the pits. He goes through, second place. No problem at all for Kirby. But where's Sellers? There is Sellers. So he's on the final corner. Now, Sellers is on the final turn, I do believe. So there is going to be the opportunity. Now, that's a good point. We need to pick up on that, actually, because Kirby has gone through about 20 seconds ago. De Bruyn and Sellers are not actually that far behind Kirby. If Kirby has a problem, they are right in the hunt for the victory. They're going to literally go nearly side by side as they come out. Who's going to get there first? Sellers might just get this on momentum. Yeah, Sellers is going to get this on momentum. So Bradley Sellers gets through. Wouter De Bruyn has to wait to get on the throttle. And that'll do nicely. So Sellers actually cleans up in the end. And De Bruyn has to watch him go.
Yeah, Sellers really making a huge gain there. Up 7 seconds now. But I think James is kind of whispering in our ears. Kirby is falling back a little bit. Not too much for concern, but might be bringing Sellers and De Bruyn back into this race as we get further along into the race here. Kirby up 27 seconds on Sellers, but slowly but surely kind of losing that time.
Well, Tom Lane is currently leading this race overall. This man, Timon Suvik, is currently second overall. It was great while it lasted, because he's now come into the pits to continue in the lead. He's a lap clear of Wayne Hutchison, so he's not going to lose the lead of Hypercar Am. But there goes Kirby through back into second position overall, as well as second in the category. And he's 25 seconds deficit to Lane. But Sellers and De Bruyn are only half a minute back from Kirby. Kirby's got to be careful here. That's Alec King. He just about gets through on the inside line. So King, a slight headache there for Dan Kirby, but not enough to be panicking. But this man, Brad Sellers, he's going to get through into second place overall fairly soon indeed. He's obviously got to wait till Tom Lane comes into the pits. Brad, don't overexert. Just keep it nice and tidy.
Yeah, these BMWs are really having quite a hard time here in turn one. Even De Bruyn there just missing his braking point just a tiny bit. Makes it very tough. And then you come into this hairpin right here. I'm telling you, this hairpin is so much more complicated than it seems. It seems like a very straightforward hairpin, but it's so easy to get on the gas late, so easy to get on the gas early there and just completely mess up your exit out of that hairpin.
Oh, agreed. It's a very difficult corner to get right, because the problem is you're coasting to the left and you're kind of swinging the car in through a left-hander as you brake. And what's the worst thing to be doing while you're turning? Braking, because that shifts the center of gravity of the car. So you've got to be very balanced in how you get the car to turn in. You've got to be so delicate. And when you're traveling at 200 miles an hour plus, trying to brake the car in for a tight left apex, the last thing you can be is delicate. You've just got to be aggressive. You've got to chuck it in. You've got to hope the car slows down on you. And it's so difficult to get it right. So it's a very tricky first corner, and probably one of the hardest first corners on any race circuit anywhere in the world. I wouldn't say the toughest, but it's certainly up there, isn't it? Because the drivers, certainly now when the rookie monsters BMWs are starting to learn that turn one is becoming a bit of a cruel mistress, actually.
Yeah, and it'll sneak up on you too. You don't really expect it to be such a tough turn. That's how this infield is, though. It's so flat, but the curves will really just eat you up. and it'll come out of nowhere. You'll think you're in complete control. You know, there's not a lot of elevation change here in the infield, so it's not like you're going to hit like a blind turn someplace like VIR, or you know. But it's so easy to, you know, kind of lull yourself into a fake sense of security on this track. Then the next thing you know, you're off track into a wall, and your race is ruined.
Well, we've got a nice little battle brewing in GT3 AM because Barge is still looking to lead the race, but because he hasn't had Mazur and Miller come into the pits recently, they're right on his 6 at the moment. So Barge is in second at the moment, based on the fact that he has pitted, and Mazur and Miller have not. Limos is just pitting, so he's going to take back the lead. But Eugene Mazur and Stephen Miller are doing their best to try and get into his blind spots, as Dahlgren just watches as Kirby tries to send the car in yet another strong direction. Now, what did I tell you earlier on about John Ouyan making progress? Well, John Ouyan has managed to get his CMS Pro into 8th position overall. I did say that he was going to make progress. In fact, it's showing up that he is 7th in class, so only Timon Suvik is making that a little bit of a difficult graphic to read, because Timon Suvik is obviously in 6th position overall, having just pitted in the lead in Hypercar AM. But John Ouyan is 8th overall, 7th in category, and his progress has been much more solid. The second half of his race, way better than his first. And Wouter de Bruin has just set the fastest lap of the entire race. He has just done a 1:33.008. Oh, and a spin right in front of Ouyan. Oh, now who was that went around? So that was Jerry Chen, we think. So Jerry Chen, unfortunately, has had a bit of a spin. He's kept under the radar a lot in the Porsche today, but he couldn't really stay off the radar that time. The dog's in a Kiwi Porsche spinning right in front of John Ouyan, and that has dropped him to 7th place in class. So that's gained. There's the replay. Jerry Chen just overexerting.
Coming out of that hairpin, just what I was just talking about just a few minutes ago.
Yep.
So easy to get your acceleration wrong there.
And that has cost Jerry Chen 6th position in the category. He actually gave it back to John Ouyan. So Ouyan, who has been off the radar for quite a long time, thanks to Jerry Chen's mistake, is now right back in the hunt, and up in front of him, Ross Smith in the new Acura has just come into the pits. So John Ouyan may be about to move up into the top 5.
Yeah, no, you've definitely called it out. Ouyan has had a great recovery drive. I know he's going to be kicking himself with the type of start that he had. You know, he was up in 2nd place after qualifying, and now back into 6th place, 7th place overall, I believe. But yeah, absolutely kicking himself for that start, but having a great recovery drive here from Ouyan.
I mean, the thing is for John Ouyan is that once you've had that problem in the first part of the... we've had... sorry, there was a car coming out of the pits. I thought we had an incident, but there was a car just trying to make the way out of the pits. I was going to say about John Ouyan, once you've had that big problem in the first 10 minutes, you know, you may as well just keep pushing, because nothing more can go wrong. You know, once you're down at the back, you know, there's nothing else to lose. So you may as well just knuckle in, realize you're not going to win, and just keep pushing and see what the car can give you. And John Ouyan has got himself right back up into the top 5. He deserves to be there. The car has responded to everything he's given it. And to be fair, there could still be a couple of nasty stings in the tail for the cars up front. So John Ouyan, look at him. He's just charging his way through. It's like the other cars are standing still.
Yeah, completely dominating those GT3 cars right there and doing it so cleanly. Now, he does have a BMW right on the tail, but I don't think that is going to be per position, is it?
No, it's not. That's either Sellers or De Bruin.
Yeah, they're both going to be a lap up on him, so he's going to have to kind of settle in here. 3 wide there, we missed it.
Sellers is being squeezed there with the Acura GT3 car trying to come through. De Bruin almost tripped over Chen, but Brad Sellers, goodness me, he had to get off the throttle. That could have been an aeroplane accident.
This is reminiscent to the first couple laps here. We had Ewan and Sellers battling it out there with De Bruin.
Yes, indeed. Brad Sellers might try exactly the same move to get past John Ouyan. Ouyan's not going to help him out. Ouyan's got straight line speed, don't forget. And look, Ouyan is sending him the far side. Well, it worked once. Yeah, but the thing is now there's way too much for Brad Sellers to lose. And he knows it. He's not going to be silly with John Ouyan, especially when they're not racing for position.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a challenge here for Sellers to either keep his mind out. Oh, he got around it. I don't know if that must have been Ouyan letting him through, because that was a very, very, very wide apex there.
Well, the thing is, it's counterproductive for Uyan to fight with Sellers to stop him coming through. He may as well sit behind Sellers. Sellers is in P2. It makes more sense in the long term for John Uyan to sit behind Sellers and follow his every move. He can gain a lot of time sat in Sellers' slipstream. Through the S's and through the infield section, he can actually gain a little bit more time because he knows that he's got the fastest car in a straight line. But if he sits within about half a second, 3/4 of a second behind Sellers, he can actually make massive progress on gaining ground on lane in the latter stages of the race because he's about 50 seconds behind him. If he follows Sellers around for the rest of this race, he could probably eat up most of that just by hanging in the draft.
Yeah, the draft is so strong here that's definitely what you got to do with your Uyan. That's definitely going to help him out because, like you said, lane is not that far up the road. He's got an opportunity to, move himself back into 4th position. Obviously not where he wanted to be at the start of this race, but everything that he's gone through, falling all the way back down to 9th or 10th place, to be back up into 5th place is very solid, but I'm sure he's got his eyes set on 4th place there. At this point, like you said, just follow that draft. It's going to be super strong for the rest of the race. It's going to get you around the track. Just keep your head down. Don't make too many mistakes here, and keep following Bradley Sellers.
Well, can we point out that Sellers has already made a couple of woofers in this race, and he is still there in P2, 8 seconds ahead of not just anybody, but Wouter de Bruin for 2nd position. So Brad Sellers, considering that he's already dropped the ball on a couple of occasions, he should be licking his wounds and feeling sorry for himself. He's not. He's just getting on with it. He's just pushing on, and he is driving like an absolute legend at the moment.
Yeah, having that spin earlier on and recovering from it, not only to make that position back up, but to, really put some distance on De Bruin. Absolutely impressive drive here by Bradley Sellers. Obviously, we got Daniel Kirby out front. We know how good he is. He's been absolutely dominating this race. Let's not take anything away from Kirby here. He has been, from qualifying on, the absolute most dominant car on the track. That being said,
we go. This is for GT3 AM honors. This is Mazur versus Miller. So Eugene Mazur trying to stay in front of the Speed Details McLaren. Stephen Miller just taking his time. Again, just don't rush it. Just watch in behind. And this is the difference between the McLaren and the Porsche up in front. The Porsche is obviously, it's a right-hand drive. Stephen Miller, the seating position of the Speed Details McLaren, it's dead center, which is great in terms of trying to pitch where the car is, either side of the front end, where the taillights are, where the headlights are, sorry. But that's a very big problem in terms of the trajectory for Steve Miller. That's going to cost him at least 0.3 of a second, I would say, by the time you get off the turn, as he just came way too wide in, and that's definitely given Eugene Mazur a bit of a breather.
Yeah, that was a huge mistake there. He had an opportunity to really make up some ground here on the second half of the straightaway, but big mistake coming into the bus stop there. He's going to have to regroup and try to figure out a different way to attack.
Yeah, look at it, 0.4 of a second. He's dropped already just off the turn. That's how critical getting the bus stop chicane is. And he's run a little bit deep, but he can correct it back in on the turn. But he's got to hang it out wide because there's Jerry Chen to his left. So he has to give him the space, or he opts to give him the space at least. He's probably thinking, well, the only way I'm going to get back on terms with Mazur now is if I just let these cars do their dance around, and I'll get my opportunity again. You can see that the sun is starting to rise now around the course. So my calculations were only about 10 minutes out. Wayne Hutchison, 23 seconds up the road from Enrique, but I'm fairly sure that Hutchison needs to pit again. Well, Hutchison is actually chasing Jerry Chen for track position. So Jerry Chen is obviously running in 8th position overall, and Wayne Hutchison is running 9th overall, but running 2nd in the hypercar category. So there is still some good little battles going on, even if they're not necessarily between the class leaders, because overall, Hutchison still wants a little bit of pride. He's got 24 seconds on Enrique, so for the moment, Hutchison has definitely got the better of his rival in the HPD Acura, but Hutchison wants a little bit more than 9th overall.
Yeah, he definitely wants to push up the field. Obviously, he's got 2nd place on the podium in the AMs, but yeah, if you're here, you come here to race, you come here to win. You don't want to, focus on being 9th overall. Obviously, as an amateur driver, you want to always try to improve yourself, better yourself in every way, shape, or form. And I'm sure he wants to continue to move up the field, and if he can, get around 10.
So we said that attrition was going to be high in this race going into it, and it certainly has been. There are only 32 cars total left running the race. We've lost Luis Lemos. We didn't really see what happened to him, but the Audi driver is now out of the race. And don't forget, he was battling for the GT3 AM victory at one stage. So Luis Lemos out of the race as the sun comes up here at Daytona with the 2.4. Will Novak in the Corvette, we lost him as well. Not entirely sure again what the problem was for Will Novak, but he dropped around about the same sort of time as Lemos and Costa, actually. Francisco Costa in his Audi. We kind of lost them all at about the same time. Then George Angelidis in the Acura. He's been kind of off the radar for a while, but then unfortunately more and more problems. George Angelidis had to park the Acura for the last time. We sort of saw Lewis Stevens having what looked like a horrific accident in the bus stop at about midnight-ish in far of the 2.4 hours. And Lewis Stevens, unfortunately, losing what was looking like a certain victory in the GT3 AM category up to that point in the sole Ford Mustang. But sadly, his race came to a premature end. Then we lost Will Miller in the Cadillac, Gilles Lalonde in the fairly early stages in his Peugeot 9X8 as well. We also lost Norm Graff, who had all sorts of difficulties in the Cadillac in the first 20 minutes. Stephen Boyce was a very early casualty in the Lamborghini. And Zander Tolman, well, he didn't even last 3 laps in his Peugeot 9X8. So big problems for him. Oh, that's a Porsche just off the apron. So obviously, you're only really meant to be there if you've got a problem. So a bit of a problem there for Bowders. It was actually lost the lap to Mountjoy, never mind to the race leader Barge. So problems then for Mountjoy. And the pit stops are coming. Betchka's in, King is in, Mayer is in, and also so is James Bowders. So a lot of people coming in for pit stops then as the sun rises, and people clearly thinking, well, we've got to change something up. So if I'm going to make my final pit stop, why don't we do it at dawn?
Yeah, this is going to be for all the marbles. So all these cars coming in right now, this is going to be their final opportunity to really, mess with anything that they can and just splash fuel, maybe take some fresh tires here. But this is definitely going to be for all the marbles here. This pit stop is crucial for the GT3 cars.
And strategy-wise, they may as well have waited until sunrise, because the thing is, if you can just get through the night, just keep pounding around, the sunrise actually gives you a little bit of an energy kick. It kind of wakes you up again a little bit. It kind of resets you. So that's the perfect time to take a pit stop, because you're having to readjust. You're kind of getting yourself back into the zone again. So why not shake it up? Get those tires on, get the fuel topped up, and make the move. Now, this is going to be treacherous. Kirby just knitting his way through the traffic. Careful. Kirby's lost it.
He kept it out of the wall, so he should be okay.
Well, that's how easy it can be.
Here, but...
he'll lose time because he nearly hit the tires on the way round. Careful. Well, he's definitely lost time.
This is going to bring... Yeah, Sellers is going to have an opportunity here because he's going to be a lot quicker down the straight at the end of the straightaway coming into the bus stop.
And he's got John Uyan on his tail. Now, this could be interesting because now they could deploy John Uyan to play the team game and help out Dan Kirby, who is in a bit of a fix. But Dan Kirby, he is very lucky that he didn't hit anything, because that was pretty scary for Dan Kirby, the race leader.
Did DeBruin come in for a pit stop because he's fallen back into 4th place? We got Lane up into 3rd now.
I think DeBruin must have pitted. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, no, that's DeBruin going slowly. That is DeBruin slowing. So DeBruin has had a problem somewhere and is actually coming into the pits as a result of having an issue. Has he lost his wing? I think he's got damage to the rear of the car. Yes, DeBruin has had a problem somewhere and he's lost his rear wing.
That's going to move Uyan up, and that is going to be absolutely crushing for DeBruin.
Well, what if John Uyan can drop his way all the way down to, 9th or 10th in the class, and then fight his way back to the podium in Hypercar Pro? That would be astonishing.
I mean, that isn't too far off. He's about 14 seconds back from Lane at the moment. He's been following Sellers around. So, to your point, Kirby and their team could pull some team orders to try to have Uyan kind of hold up Bradley Sellers as much as he can. But at the same time, he doesn't really want to do that because he wants to continue to use that draft. He's got an opportunity to get himself back on the podium.
Absolutely. You've got to feel for Wouter de Bruin. I'm afraid his chances of taking the win today have just gone. The rear wing has come off the car. We didn't see what happened, sadly. Not a problem that Dan Kirby has to worry about, of course, because the Peugeot 9X8 doesn't have a rear wing. So Dan Kirby can just focus on his objectives and keep himself moving further. This car works perfectly well without a rear wing. An amazing bit of aerodynamic intelligence. When they first brought this car out and they first showed it to us and we saw that it didn't have a rear wing, everybody either giggled or went, you haven't finished building it yet. But no, the Peugeot team knew exactly what they were doing. They've got an incredible team out there in France putting this car together, and it is a phenomenal bit of kit. Just wait until it gets to Le Mans this year, because all of their program is dialed up for that race in June on the 10th and 11th of the 23rd year of this century. And Dan Kirby putting on an excellent run of it as he knits his way through past the Acura. That'll do nicely. He's still 12 seconds ahead of Brad Sellers, so he's definitely lost some time, but he's played his last get-out-of-jail-free card in Monopoly, hasn't he?
Yeah, and I think Ulan has definitely fallen off the tail of Sellers there, because he's starting to lose some time here to lane. So chances for Ulan to make himself back onto the podium starting to get a little slimmer and slimmer, but Daniel Kirby just absolutely dominating this race here, slipping through that traffic like a pro, and not having to really stress too much. Yeah, sure, he lost quite a bit of time with that mistake, but looks like he's kind of shaking it off and forgotten about it already, which is definitely what a professional driver needs to do. You got to have a very short memory.
I would say Kirby probably lost about 15 seconds in that little moment on this corner, so he certainly couldn't afford to do that again, because the gap is down to 12 and a half seconds, so you cannot afford to make that mistake again, as Brad Sellers is definitely going to be there for the picking to try and get that lead off him. I've just, the amount we talk about Kirby being so dominant up front, but even he is not impervious to mistakes. But this man, Brad Sellers, second position, when the back's against the ropes, he's the one you can depend on. He's the one who's dug deep and found something extra special today. He's only 12 seconds off the lead. In fact, he's less than that now. Sellers has suddenly realized, do you know what? Kirby does make mistakes. That Peugeot can be beaten. Let's go get him.
Yeah, Sellers has definitely had an absolute barnstorming race tonight. Definitely think, if anything, he's got an opportunity for driver of the day, putting that BMW up into second place here. I do want to jump back here. I'm kind of upset, not upset, but it was unfortunate that Stevens fell out, because when that Ford Mustang GT3 was still on track, not only was he the AM leader, but he was in third overall in the GT3 class, period. So I was really excited to see how that Mustang was going to handle and perform throughout the rest of the race. Kind of bummed to see that one out. Obviously, we don't want to see anybody out, but the attrition of this race is real. And these cars are not going to be able to withstand every single thing that is thrown at them.
Oh, Sellers. Oh, he's been taken off. He's been taken off. Sellers connects with the BMW. Oh, my goodness. We saw Kirby drop it, and now we've seen Brad Sellers be collected by the BMW. Oh, that is devastating. Any chance Brad Sellers might have had of stealing the win off Kirby, I think it's pretty much been put to bed. We're going to have to see that one again. But Brad Sellers being hungry on the inside line, trying to go for the move. Job done. Good night, Vienna.
Yeah, that was absolutely stunning there. That is the last thing that Sellers wanted to see, was that BMW coming into him. Getting off the track there, it's going to lose some time. But luckily for him, he's still got quite a ways back to lane. So as long as he kind of just keeps focused, that's his, third mistake now that he's made. He's only got 30 minutes left. He's just got to kind of sit back and relax now at this point. Keep that podium under control.
Well, the biggest problem, of course, is that Brad Sellers actually hit the wall when he had that incident. So how much damage has the suspension taken? So we want to keep an eye on that. In fact, look, Brad Sellers is actually dropping down off the apron. He's going to have to pit. This is going to be like Wouter de Bruin all over again. The BMW charge has suddenly collapsed. First for Wouter de Bruin, and now for Brad Sellers. He hit the wall pretty darn hard when he hit it. So, devastating.
Who's gonna take advantage of this? That's gonna be Ewan back up in the podium.
It is indeed. John Uyan is suddenly going to find himself in overall fourth position, because Suvik is still in front of him, I do believe. And John Uyan is going to move to third position in the hypercar category. You would never have said that an hour and a half ago. That is absolutely phenomenal from John Uyan. Yes, he may have the fastest car in a straight line. You've still got to know how to drive it.
Yeah, definitely a phenomenal recovery drive here for John Huyan. Sellers making that huge mistake. He's about to be taken advantage of here in the pits. Huyan is going to be moving up into third place for that final podium in the pro class. Obviously, overall, Sovik is having a phenomenal race. Already a lap up on Hutchison, second place in the AMS, but third place overall. Absolutely stunning race from quite a few drivers here, but it's been kind of crazy to see these BMWs making these mistakes over and over again. De Bruin and Sellers really seemed like they had the cars underneath them to, really take the fight up to Kirby, and they've just, whether it be mental lapses or, maybe the car just doesn't hang on to itself in the longer parts of the stints, but definitely been quite challenging for these BMWs, and they've made the mistakes that have knocked them out of the podium here.
Well, it's been fascinating. Where's the big deficiency in the Peugeot? It's in the slow corner. In the slow corner, the car is so quick under acceleration that the back end just wants to overtake the front. You've got to be so delicate on throttle application through the slow corners. Where's the BMW weak spot? It's under brakes. That's where it's really starting to lose out. And you can see that with Sellers. You can see it with De Bruin. You can see it with pretty much everybody in the BMW M Hybrid at some point during this race. Getting that car stopped is a real mission. And I don't mean just in terms of the brakes not slowing the car down, but it's the entire balance of the car in that element, in that particular scenario, because the car just travels under braking. And you can see the car wanting to swap ends. So that's where they really need to understand more about this BMW. They need to know where the car is going to travel in the braking zone so that they can react to it. At the moment, Sellers and De Bruin's biggest weak spot is not their ability. It's not the car itself, but it's the travel in the braking zone. It becomes so unpredictable at the ragged edge. And that's where the BMW's deficiency actually lies. It's in the braking zone rather than over the spread of a lap.
That's absolutely correct, Jake. And to be completely honest with you, I mean, this is the first race of the season. These are all new cars, so obviously these drivers are going to be learning these cars throughout the season here. But you make a great point there. That's the biggest deficiency on the BMW hybrid, and that's going to be something that these drivers are going to have to learn and tweak, with their setups throughout the season. They can take the lessons that they learned today, hopefully, learn from them, and maybe next time we're on track, they'll be able to make an adjustment here, an adjustment there. By the end of the season, they should be able to get this car under control. These BMWs are very even keel across the board, and I expect to see quite a bit from them as the season progresses on.
Here is the latest on-track battle. Brian Hall is about to be overcome by Brad Sellers, who's going to bounce back and get into fourth position before they even turn in for the left-hander at turn one. That is absolutely superb from Brad Sellers. You just cannot beat a guy when he's already down, can you? Brad Sellers will always find the way to bounce back. He's got a lot of work to do now to catch back up to John Huyan, but if anyone can, Brad Sellers can.
Yeah, great mindset, able to just completely forget about all the mistakes that he's made, not let it, snowball any further than it already has, and then just kind of shake it off and, get them moved on Hall after coming out of the pits.
Oh, and that's Overton. Overton has gone around. So Overton has had a bit of a moment there in the Dogs and Kiwi Porsche. He recovers right in front of another Porsche. That's up at turn 4 in the infield. So he just about gets away with that one without too many difficulties. But Overton, it's been one of those sorts of races for the Dogs and a Kiwi Porsche team. Let's have a look at it and see if we can find out what happened. Comes through. Did he do that all on his own? The Porsche's come across on him. And Overton has worked his way through. No, that's still live pictures, I do believe. So Overton, yeah, it's not quite getting there. Well, never mind. We certainly know that Overton and the Dogs and a Kiwi Porsche team have had one of those sorts of races. It's been a little bit like that, hasn't it? So this is Overton.
I think this
yeah,
is the
same situation,
yeah.
same place, same situation again. But yeah, Matthew Overton and the entire Dogs and a Kiwi Porsche team, actually. It's not just been Matthew Overton, but also we saw Jerry Chen have his problems earlier on as well. It's been a bit of a clumsy race, unfortunately, for the team. They haven't quite had things go their way. Here's Barry DiMarzo, briefly, because DiMarzo is obviously now running in third in the AM category. There is the BMW M1 Hybrid. Now, he's had a fairly similar race, actually, to Sellers and De Bruin, in the case of he's had his moments where it's all gone well, but then he's had a couple of drop the ball moments as well. And I would probably guess that it's going to be for exactly the same problems that we saw from the Rookie Monsters. We have a feeling that there might be some rain on the circuit. It is raining. So there you go. The windscreen wipers are down. and they are in action. Now, this could not have been timed any better with about 25 minutes left to go. Everybody's out there on dry tires, of course. So what do you do now? Do you just stay out, or do you come in for tires? Well, DeMarzo clearly feels it's wet enough to come in for tires.
Yeah, no, that's definitely an opportunity right there.
There's the proof. There's the proof. He can't even stop the car on the way into the pits. Now, that is going to be a big warning for everybody else. It's clearly too wet out there to stay on the slick tyres, but it's also too wet to come into the pits to change to the wet tyres. What is Kirby going to do about this now? And he's got a big problem, actually, because the Peugeot NX8 is the fastest car in the straight line. It doesn't have a rear wing. What's he going to have? Comparable downforce.
Yeah, I'm getting flashbacks to Russia a few years ago in Formula One. I really hope Kirby's able to kind of maneuver this car back to pit lane here and not have to worry about keeping it out of the wall here. This is definitely getting very slick on track.
It's interesting you point that out, actually, Mike, because the AM drivers are going to go for the wet tyres before the pro drivers are. The pro drivers will have a little bit more of a natural feel for the conditions, perhaps, than the AM drivers will. The AM drivers won't want to take the risk. They'll want to come in straight away. But the pro drivers will just try and understand what the rain is doing with the circuit just a little bit more. They'd stay out maybe a lap, possibly 2 laps longer than their AM counterparts, because they can feel a little bit more about the behavior. What's making this scary, though, is the banking. That's what makes this really scary. The wet conditions with the banking added into it. You've got to be so smooth, you've got to be so delicate, and the rain makes you be anything but delicate. So this is going to be tricky as they head into turn 1. Kirby just trying to get it. Look, he's really wrestling. This is where things are going to get trickier and trickier as the corners progress. And as that rain continues to come down, CMS Pro are going to have to prepare him for an unscheduled pit stop.
Yeah, this is definitely going to get very tight here towards the end. It's just throwing another wrench in what's already been a phenomenal 24-hour race here. We've seen pretty much everything we can so far in this race. Now throwing the rain in there, it's just going to add a little extra. I'm excited to see the rest of this race here.
Well, yes, indeed. I mean, 2 hours have flown by. I've not really noticed how quickly it's gone. Vasilis Katarinakis has got into the lead again in the GT Pro category. He's 43 seconds clear of Gutierrez. Don't rush this, Vasilis. Just keep it going. Keep it going. Now, into the pits has come Miller. Into the pits has come Jones. So, again, the AM drivers have reacted. Oh, there's an off. That's one of the CMS Pros. That's one of the CMS Pros that's gone off, isn't it? Or is that Jerry Chen? It's John Huyan. John Huyan has dropped it. Now, this is great news for Sellers, because Sellers was trying to catch back up to him. So John Huyan, who is now 3rd in the category, he dropped it. Now, let's have a look and see. Well, unfortunately, we can only see the end of the incident. So John Huyan obviously pushing it very hard. And he wasn't the only one. Look, that's also Hutchison going off. Look, 2 or 3 of them going off there. So Hutchison went off from 2nd place in the AM category as well. So big problems. Several drivers obviously finding turn 4 very hot to handle. Well, I think it might be time to make the jump to go into the pits then. Dan Kirby obviously continuing on for another lap. Several drivers making the bid. Icazo is into the pits. Well, James Parfitt has been keeping an eye on things from the sidelines. James, this is very much crunch time now. It's clearly getting too wet out there for slick tyres, but it also looks like it's too wet to try and dive in for the pits.
The problem they got with 20 minutes to go, Jake, is what do you do? Look at Kirby now. He's just drifting it. And then somebody else has gone round as well. It's clearly getting to that point where they've got to make that call. And I believe that may have been De Bruyne. It was De Bruyne coming back on as well. So, yeah, clearly the hypercars are now sitting there going, with so little what they've got to their disposal in weight class compared to the GT3s, there's nothing holding them on track. It is at that point. If they had inters, I'm sure they would be in, but they can't keep going if it rains for the next 20 minutes like this, because Kirby will not get through the end of the race with it like this. They've got to be looking at now, okay, we've got to think about this. Can I go in? Kirby's got a massive gap. He can go in, get changed and come back out again, Jake.
Well, that's the thing, because Uyan's come in, Sellers has come in, Lane is a minute and a half down the road. Is Dan Kirby potentially thinking, well, if everybody else comes in, I can just ride this out. Maybe it'll stop raining. Maybe I can just keep on pushing. But you're right. It gets to a certain point where you think, come on, you're just playing with fate.
He's going in.
Yeah, he's got to. He's got to. You're absolutely right. He boxes. But now comes the problem of how do you slow the car down enough to bring it in? Look, you've got Kirby in, Lane's in, Uyan's in, Sellers in, Hall's in. Everybody's come in the hypercar category. It's just got too wet too quickly. Timon Suvic has, I think he's stayed out, hasn't he? So Suvic is just continuing on, but surely he is running the gauntlet here.
I'm wondering if he's pitted earlier on and we didn't see it. Because he seems to have that quiet, and he stopped to the car. That's the only reason I say it is because he stopped the car in turn 4.
There's another off as well, just behind him there. Yellow in sector 1. I didn't quite see who that was, but now cars are dropping it.
Sellers has had an off track as well, so there's a lot going on.
Sellers.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So
this
they
is
are
absolute mayhem.
Yeah,
it absolutely is.
I'll leave you boys to it. Take care.
Thank you very much, James. Good to get your insight, because obviously James has been keeping an eye on it for quite a while now, watching how the rains come in. So Kirby's in pit road, Lane is in pit road. Suvic, we're not entirely sure whether he's already pitted or not. He may well have done, but this is just carnage right at the end of the race. The rain comes down. We've only got 18 minutes left, but anything could change at this point. Katarinakis is coming in the lead of GT. Barge pitted earlier, but the problem is Barge pitted before the rain came down. So I think Barge has got to pit again, unless they've got decent enough grip in the car that they can keep him going. Yellow in sector 2. No major shocks now anytime there's a yellow in any sector. Yellow in sector 3. Suvic plows on, but did he pit before to change tyres? And there's a penalty, and it's for De Bruyn. De Bruyn has obviously been speeding out of the pit lane. So woe to De Bruyn, it just goes from bad to worse. It's a stop-go penalty. Oh.
That's just absolutely just a gut-wrenching here for De Bruyn. He's had such an up-and-down race, and just having it finish this way, absolutely shocking.
Oh, he's drifted off the road. He's drifted off the road. De Bruyn just got just no grip at all, and he's going to just charge across the apron. This is absolutely catastrophic for Wouter De Bruyn.
I can't believe that. That's just absolutely insane. He's got absolutely no grip.
We've had confirmation. Suvic has pitted. Suvic has pitted from the lead. Hutchinson is now in. So Timon Suvic continuing on his way.
Yeah, Suvic definitely seems like he's in complete control of the car, so he's got to have the rain tires on there.
Well, this is just farcical now. Everybody's just desperately trying to keep the car on the road. But the problem is, this is now akin to a drunk dad at a wedding on roller skates with ice cubes strapped to the wheels, blindfolded. You've got absolutely no chance of catching. And look, you've got spray coming off the cars now. This is how heavy the rain's getting. So Jerry Chen in the Dogs and Kiwi Porsche, just trying desperately not to trip over the back marker. But where do you place the car? The problem is they haven't done any running really in these cars in these wet conditions. They are learning what these cars are doing in the wet on the job.
Yeah, and what's phenomenal is we got a great view there of the interior of the car and how he could not see that GT3 car to his right. You could barely see the roof there. There is so little, availability that these drivers have for the view in these cars at certain points, and it's just amazing.
Oh, that's Alec King. Alec King's gone off in the Porsche. So that's the former race leader in GT3, Alec King, going off.
Yeah, we've seen quite a bit of quite a few incidents here where attrition has just absolutely slaughtered people's races. Alec King being one of them. Coming out of turn 6 there.
Yep, turn 6, and we've got more problems because it looks to me as though we've got a penalty for Henrique. Henrique picked up a penalty in his last place, and that's Barge. That's the leader in GT3 AM. So Stuart Barge has skated off the road in the
same place as
Hang on a minute.
Bruyn there.
Has he lost the wheel? Has Barge lost the wheel? I think he's lost the wheel.
Yeah, that's a lot of sparks coming out of the front there.
Barge has lost his left front wheel. So Stuart Barge is now desperately trying to get the car back to the pits. Stuart Barge has hit the wall big time. Look, he's lost his front left wheel. That is disastrous. And now he's skating along the road Gilles Villeneuve style, trying to get that car back to the pits without causing A, too much damage, or B, losing the victory. But it's too late. It's gone. The win is gone. Miller's going to take the lead from Mazur.
Yeah, this is absolutely stunning here from Barge. Miller's going to be coming in. He's going to be able to take over that. Measure is definitely going to be coming in the third.
Goodness, look at
yeah,
Barge.
Stuart Barge
Look at
just
Barge.
has no control.
Straight lining the
completely
chicane
skipping the
completely at the bus stop. Oh my goodness, he's got a penalty for that. That's just going to add insult to injury. The problem is you can't skip over the bus stop like that. He was always going to get a penalty for it. But the problem is he can't turn in. So he's just got to try and get that car. Now he's got to try and stop the car on the way into the pits. But the race leader in GT3 AM, well,
he's going to get a penalty here.
He'll get a penalty. He'll get a drive-through. He's already got a drive-through. But I tell you what.
I think he'll get another one.
Stuart Barge.
He's coming in hot.
I'm amazed he got that back. Absolutely staggered that he got that back. That is absolutely
I don't think he would
phenomenal.
have if he hadn't cut the bus stop.
Well, true. I suppose you've got to take a penalty to get to the end of the race in his case. 14 minutes to go and still unbelievably unpredictable.
We've seen just about everything that could happen so far today. This has been a phenomenal first race of the season. I'm so glad to be here. These cars have been absolutely stunning. The drama between the GT3 and the Hypercars have been absolutely stunning. This is just setting up to be such a phenomenal season here.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you what, about 45 minutes ago, this was looking about as predictable as a Shakespeare play. Now it's a Stockhausen concert. You can't tell which way it's going. Absolutely amazing. Kirby is still your leader by a minute and a half, by the way, to Lane in second. Uyan is up to third. Sellers is fourth. Hall is fifth and Smith is sixth. That's how it's looking in Hypercar at the moment. But obviously, it's changed a lot since the last time we looked at it. This man has been the wisest of them all. Timon Suvic saw the writing on the wall, boxed for tyres early, and where is he? Third overall. Absolutely mega.
Yeah, and it's been a phenomenal race by Suvic all night long. So even without the rain, without everything going on, he's been having such a great race. I wouldn't be surprised to see him on a podium without all the drama that's happened.
Great stuff from Suvic. Just so smooth. Even in these tricky wet conditions, just keeping it together. But this is the problem, and it's happened in the last 10 minutes so much. These drivers have not done a lot of running in the wet at all. And the problem is, there was a 50-50 chance we were going to get rain, and the prediction for the start was dry. So everybody's done all their testing, all their running in the dry. So for these last 25 minutes of the race to suddenly have rain, nobody knows what to do. They don't know what the car's going to give them. They don't know how much grip they're dealing with, which is why it's pure chaos. Ed Jones is now up to second position in GT3 AM thanks to the chaos of Barge. But that's yet another category where a certain leader has disappeared because we obviously lost early in the race. Oh, Alec King has retired. I'm being told that Alan King has retired from the race in the Porsche. So Alec King is out of this race. He was the leader. Well, there you go. That's three. He's in the pits, but he's in the pit garage. There he is. So Alec King is not going any further. He may get out again, but I wouldn't really be surprised if he didn't. But that's three clear victors in the GT3 AM category now. Lewis Stevens, Alec King, and Stuart Barge. And none of them are going to win this race. There's Eric Moyne. We've barely seen him all race, actually. But Eric Moyne is 14th overall, 10th in the pro category. Just keeping himself to himself in the Acura Mistral Porsche. And he's had all sorts of things go off around him. And he's certainly had his own problems. But now he is actually in a very solid P10. Keeping it on the island, keeping it nice and tidy as Enrique comes in to serve his stop-go penalty. But, well, I mean, we've still got 10 minutes to go, and there's all sorts of things that could happen here. This battle for second place in GT3 AM is not settled yet because Ed Jones is being caught by Eugene Mazur, and there's 5 seconds between those two. But this race is not done. I mean, Kirby, thank goodness, has, from his point of view, has been able to extend the gap another 10 seconds over Lane. But look at it, through the bus stop. There's no grip at all.
Yeah, this is absolutely phenomenal control these drivers are having because it's the first time that these guys are really under these rain conditions, but to do so while under race conditions, flat out race conditions, you know, these guys are really toughing it out here. You're really able to see the ability that they truly have as they're able to kind of like see things and learn things on the fly here, but that's what we're going to have to deal with here for the first half of the season is these cars, are all brand new. We're getting used to them. The drivers are getting used to the setups and everything. And then the first couple of times that you come into the rain, that's just going to, throw a complete curveball into things. These cars are going to handle so much differently. And it's just been an absolute stunning race here by Daniel Kirby, but also for Sovic to come through in P3 from the Hypercar AM class. Absolutely stunning race by Sovic.
Yet another penalty for Stuart Barge, courtesy of him having 3 wheels on his wagon. And as I thought, it was for speeding in the pit lane. He couldn't get the car stopped in time at the white line by the look of it. Either that or he was just desperate to get out and make up for lost time and sped on the way out the pits. And he already had a drive-through penalty coming his way for skipping the bus stop chicane. So that's 2 penalties now that Stuart Barge has to serve. And it looks as though Enrique also got 2. So Enrique has got to serve 2 penalties before the end of this race as well. So he's done the drive-through penalty, apparently. He still has his stop and go to go. Poor Alec King. He's just popped up in the chat box now. I mean, what an opportunity that was to take a brilliant victory in the GT3 AM. I mean, the only consolation he can have is he's not the only one that's had the race come apart for him, because Stuart Barge has had it all fall apart. And obviously, way back in the day, we had the problems too for Lewis Stevens. So Lewis Stevens having problems. And here's Stuart Barge, who is going to have more time in the last 10 minutes in pit lane than he is going to on track by the look of things. It's such a shame for Stuart Barge. This is his drive-through. He's still got his stop and go to take. But, well, he was leading so comfortably in GT3 AM, and it was just not to be for Stuart Barge.
Yeah, Stuart Barge definitely having an incident there. We didn't see what exactly took that tire off, but obviously that's just completely ruined his day. Back in the 5th in the AM, he's going to probably have to just take what he can at this point, obviously, but really, really, really disappointing for an end of the day. That started off very well for Stuart Barge.
Yeah, so Stuart Barge and also, of course, the former leader in that category, battling away in the early stages, Lewis Stevens, and we also lost the GT3 Pro race leader, Alec King. So just goes to show you, just because you're the fastest or you're leading at a certain point in the race, it's not done until the fat lady sings. And with 7.5 minutes to go, she's only just started warming up those vocal cords for Vasilis Katerinakis in GT3 Pro. It's almost done, but it's definitely not dusted yet.
No, and Vasilis has had quite a quiet race here the second half of the race. After King fell out, he hasn't had any competition from anybody else. King was the only person that he's really battling with, and then we saw King have his incident and then get the penalty and the speeding in the pit lane, and then his race kind of fell apart, and now he's out of the race. But I mean, we saw a great battle between the 2 of them earlier on, and ever since then, Katerinakis just kind of gone away with the Pro Series.
Sorry, Mike, we've lost Wayne Hutchison. Wayne Hutchison has brilled it into the garage. So Wayne Hutchison, the man who was second in the Hypercar AM category, he's now dropped out of the race by the look of it. So Wayne Hutchison, there he is in the pit lane, in the garage, and that's another big name from this race who has fallen by the wayside. These last 25 minutes of the race have been so punishing to the big names on the podium.
Yeah, and if we take a look there at the AM class for the Hypercars, Enrique up into 2nd place, 3 laps down from Sovic. So Sovic has absolutely just completely dominated the AM class today.
Well, he's pretty much... I mean, Sovic is pretty much the only person in this entire race that didn't really trip over anybody in the wet phase of the race. Everybody else, including the leader Dan Kirby, has had a problem in the wet conditions. I think Sovic is the only one I didn't see make a mistake in the rain. So
yeah.
A fascinating run from Timon Sovic. He's still 3rd overall. Only Dan Kirby and Tom Lane are on the lead lap now. But Sovic is just taking it nice and easy. He has the biggest lead of anybody in any class. 3 laps now over Guillermo Benchka. And I have to say, fair play to Guillermo Benchka, because he was way down in 5th position in the category at Hypercar AM at one point. He was behind Hutchison, DiMarzo and Enrique, and he has fought his way back. I don't think he would have thought he would be 2nd place in the Hypercar AM category at any point during this one. And he has doggedly fought his way back into contention as Wouter de Bruin picks up another penalty. So Wouter de Bruin is in more trouble.
Man, things just keep going from bad to worse to worse to worse with de Bruin, and it sounds like that penalty was for track limits, so that's going to be something that's been building up all day long.
Drive through
there, yeah.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Walter de Bruyn, who was challenging for the victory, as was his teammate Brad Sellers. It's all come apart, and now Tom Lane has finally fallen a lap behind Dan Kirby. Oh, who's that? That's the Acuri Mistral. That's the Acuri Mistral that's dropped onto the apron. That is Eric Moynet, I do believe. So Moynet has fallen off the racing line. Tom Lane in the Manta Squid Porsche is going through. There is Eric Moynet struggling to get back to the pits. Oh, and he's spun into the wall on the banking. That's big damage, but how was he missed by the Ferrari going by?
That was very close there, and that's exactly why they want you to stay below the double line there, because it is so tough to get back on that banking. Really lucky for that Ferrari to get through there.
That was so tight. There was a hypercar, I think, trying to come past Eric Moynet at the same breath. It was Jerry Chen, and Chen has now slipped off the road. So Chen, I think he had a spin trying to avoid Eric Moynet's car. So Jerry Chen and Eric Moynet having big problems. Wow, that's...
Jerry Chen's another one that we saw up in 6th place, really falling off here tonight.
There's the spin. He changed his line, trying to dodge Eric Moynet the first time, and then obviously that threw him off his game, and he dropped it in the bus stop.
That was a huge hit. So both of those guys...
So I think, well, Moynet and Chen are both going to really struggle to get to the end of the race, and Jerry Chen can't even turn the car into turn 1 without difficulty. Yeah, why on earth didn't Chen or Moynet make their way into the pits? Well, I was supposed to be thinking, well, we've got 3.5 minutes. We may as well just hobble home with broken limbs and just try and get to the finish of the race now. But that car is going to be like driving a banana in a straight line.
And it's always been one of my favorite things to do, is to drive my fruit around.
Absolutely. Well, what else are you going to do? You can just sit there and stagnate. Luciano Vicarzo trying to get the turn into turn 1. Bentley Continental trying to point in the right direction. Goodness me, the spray is just getting so tricky. I mean, look at that. You can't even get the car straightened up in a straight line without the back end starting to twitch around. This circuit is just so punishing in the wet. It's a tough enough circuit in the dry. Never mind when the rain starts coming down. But watch him through the left here. Look. That is definite turning. That's proper oversteer. That's proper counter turning, isn't it? Because you've really got to control that back end.
Yeah, the Bentley is a very planted car. It's a very heavy car, so you don't see it on a straightaway like that kind of get loose the way you're seeing it right now. So this is definitely going to be tough conditions for all these drivers, but it's really nice to really get a good sense of, you know, the grip they're having there with that ride along with the Bentley.
Well, that's Walter de Bruyn making his way out of the pits. This is a replay, I do believe. So de Bruyn actually nudged the wall on the way out of the pits there. Look at that. He's actually nudged the wall on the way through. So de Bruyn, I think he just wants the checkered flag now, to be honest. He's never going to win. He knows he's not going to win. Hang on, was that the BMW flying off the road? Was that Brandon Gant going wide there? Because I think Brandon Gant just dropped it. And he was in 5th position anyway. He's managed to recover it. But certainly a very tricky race for him anyway, and it's just getting worse and worse. There's a minute and a half to go, thank goodness, for half of these drivers who are just praying that the race finishes, because this is just so tricky now in these parts of the course. Well, where is Dan Kirby? Because Dan Kirby surely is about to start the final lap.
Yeah, and this has been, we've been talking about it all night long. It's been a race of attrition, and it's absolutely showing itself. It's rearing its ugly head here right at the end here, coming onto the last lap here, and it looks like Daniel Kirby is going to be taking that white flag.
Well, he's a lap ahead of Lane, so unless he bins it on the final lap, he cannot lose this race now, because obviously you've got to finish the race. If you have a crash on the final lap and you don't finish, you don't win. It's as simple as that, even if you're a lap ahead of the car behind. So Dan Kirby's just got to bring this home now, and he manages to nip past... Oh, he manages to nip past the spinning Henrique. That was close. And Philippe Henrique, he can't even get the car pointed in the right direction when he rejoins. So Philippe Henrique spins it again on the rejoin. And I think I saw Brad Sellers just dropping it at that same corner a lap ago. So Brad Sellers having just as many problems as everybody out there. But Dan Kirby, well, there are some standout performances through the field. A lot of people that you have to say driver of the day in their various categories. Unfortunately, we can't really give that to either of the BMWs anymore. Kirby, I would give it to Kirby, but you know what? I'm going to give driver of the day in Hypercar to John Uyan without any shadow of a doubt at all, to fight his way back through. That has been absolutely astonishing to finish third in Hypercar.
Wow, I think I'd have to go with Sovic because of the complete domination and the complete, just...
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
He's the only driver that we haven't talked about making any mistakes.
I mean, I would say
gotta
Sovic
agree
in
with
the
you.
app. Yeah, Sovic in the app.
Okay, so you're just going strictly with the pros. Okay, yeah, Uyan definitely falling all the way back to 10th place. Yeah, me and James both thought you were doing overall, but Uyan falling all the way back in the 10th place after starting in second and making it back up to the podium. Yeah, sure, he took advantage of those BMW's mistakes, but takes a driver to last to take advantage of those mistakes. And I gotta agree with you as far as the pros in the hypercar class go. Uyan definitely.
The checkered flag is in the air, and I think Kirby may have already taken it, such as the crazy nature of this race. But there is Dan Kirby. He has come through. He was a lap clear of Lane anyway. Dan Kirby is your victor. Excellent stuff. Tom Lane in the Manta Squid Porsche in second. And in third position overall is going to be Timon Suvic. There is John Uyan taking third in the category. What a comeback for John Uyan in Hypercar Pro. But there is Timon Suvic, the winner in Hypercar Ram, easily the driver of the day across any category. And Timon Suvic, oh, well, they're obviously having some thrills and spills post-flag. Vasilis Katarinakis celebrates as he takes the victory in the GT3 category. And here comes, who would have thought it, Stephen Miller in the Speed Details McLaren. I don't think even he thought he had a wing and a prayer to go for the victory in GT3 Am today, but Stephen Miller is going to come through and take the victory in the 2.4 of Daytona. What an astonishing race, an incredible battle, and it is, well, that is just an astonishing turn of fortunes for Stephen Miller in the McLaren, who was down at about fourth position at one stage, I think. But what a crazy race. What an amazing start to the season. And that is without a doubt the craziest VWSC race I have ever seen. What a battle. What a performance from Dan Kirby. A superlative victory from Timon Suvic in class and third overall. Amazing performances from Vasilis Katarinakis and Stephen Miller to win the GT3 categories. Full credit to anyone who was able to bring that car home to the finish, because that was just about as insane as it gets in esports. That was phenomenally good.
Yeah, that was pure drama from start to finish. You had a couple incidents there where you thought, we got this race figured out. We know exactly what's going on. Then all of a sudden it just flipped on its head multiple times. One driver that you thought was going to win out of the race, another driver that you thought had no chance up into first place, and you see that throughout the field, up and down. Great racing all day long, and I am just elated to have been able to see that and commentate with you today, Jake. That was just a phenomenal race up and down through the field.
Oh, Mike, it's been fantastic fun. It's been great to have you with me in the box. I mean, in terms of the play-by-play all the way through the race that had so many incidents in it. I mean, you know how good Avatar was. Last year was a great year. Avatar was a great movie. Then along comes The Way of the Water and knocks it out of the park. And The Water really did show us the way here in Daytona. It gave us an amazing thriller right at the end. Just a phenomenal race. But this man, Dan Kirby, is our worthy victor. Great performance from the CMS Pro Peugeot team. What a way to start the season for Dan Kirby. And, well, there's just so many things to unravel. So we're going to stick around for a little bit longer so that we can get some words from a few of the competitors. Obviously, the 2.4 hours is very exhausting, so we may not get everybody we want to speak to, but we'll certainly try and grab a word, at the very least, with Dan Kirby. I'd love to get a little bit of reaction from Timon Suvic as well. For me, absolutely, I agree with you boys. The driver of the day across any category. Katarinakis, though, it would be great to hear from him. He's actually coming to the booth first. So let's hear from our GT3 winner, if we can. An absolutely brilliant performance from Vasilis Katarinakis, who has joined us in the booth. Vasilis, that was such a complex, crazy, complicated battle. Even before the rain came down, you had an amazing duel with Alec King. So many things going on through the race. How does that one feel, to take the victory in that one?
Where to begin and where to end? It was a very chaotic race. I mean, going into it, I just thought, I was like, okay, let's see how it goes, because it's been quite a long time since I've been in the car. So I thought, let's see how it goes. But all of a sudden, I believe Eric, I don't remember the name, crashes out. So immediately I was battling for the podium. And then Alec, I passed him. I don't know what happened with him. So I think he must have crashed. And after that, it was just trying to bring it home in one piece, not spin it, which unfortunately I'm known for, doing it in the crunching moments. And then the rain came, and I was like, oh, yeah, make this more difficult than it isn't already. So, yeah.
And obviously, when you've got a race like that as well, with so many different things going on around you at the same breath as well, I mean, that's just, how on earth do you keep your eyes focused on the job when so many different variables are happening around you?
Simple. You don't. You don't. It was very tricky, especially, of course, with the rain coming down. Because now in rFactor 2, we used to have the percentages where it would tell you, okay, so it's 10%, 50% wet. But now that has been changed, and it tells you the conditions straight away. So you have to guess a little bit now. Do I go into the wet tire? Do I not go into the wet? And also, we didn't know how long the rain was going to be. So, yeah.
Fascinating. But what a fantastic drive, Vasilis. It really was great to watch and great to witness. You totally deserve the victory, keeping your head in all of that chaos. Congratulations. What a great start to the season. Great job.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Brilliant performance from Vasilis Katarinakis, who takes the victory in the GT3 category. Now, let's see if we can grab a word with Stephen Miller. I really want to give him some kudos for getting the victory done in the GT3 AM category, because that had so many different twists and turns. But Stephen Miller in the Speed Details McLaren coming through to pick up the victory. Steve, about an hour and a half ago, you were probably not even thinking about the victory at that stage. I mean, what an amazing turnaround.
No, I wasn't, because I had gotten in 2 accidents at the very beginning of the race in the first few laps, and I just put my head down, and then I got caught up to Eugene, and Eugene was very hard to pass, but he was not too hard to catch. But his turbo boost, I think, gave him an advantage on the straights, but I had an advantage in the infield. And then he made a pit stop, and guess what? It started to rain 1 lap before my pit stop. So I had the opportunity to go on to the wets, which wasn't part of the original plan. And from there, I just kept it between the lines on the side of the road as best as I could.
I mean, everybody was struggling with the conditions. Everybody was finding it really hard to keep the car on the black stuff. I mean, from your perspective, what was it like as the conditions deteriorated? Just how much grip were you struggling to find?
I think I slowed down quite a bit, because it's interesting for this particular race this year. The car seemed to have a lot of grips, and it was easy to have a sense of where the grip was, and when it was going to grip and how. So I basically just drove the same way in the wet that I drove in the dry, just slower.
Well, it was very calm and very composed. Obviously, it's a perfect start for you and the Speed Details McLaren. Heading to the next event, how confident are you that this is going to be the sort of opportunity that you can take advantage of, the sort of pace that you can come up with?
Well, it'll depend on who's in the race and where we're racing and just how it goes. Maybe I've found something in the McLaren setup that works, and hopefully it'll work at Portimao too.
Terrific. A great job, Steve. I mean, what a turnaround. A brilliant victory. Very deserved. Great job, buddy. Well done.
Thank you.
Superb. Well, it was such a great race to watch right to the end there. And Steve Miller picking up the win when it was not looking his way at all. Such a fantastic turnaround from the McLaren star. Right, let's get a word with our driver of the day, Timon Suvic, having had such a superb run all the way through to run not just to the victory in the Hypercar AM category, but to be 3rd overall with barely a wheel wrong at any point. Timon Suvic. Timon, I mean, we are just in awe all the way through this race. There were so many chances to lose ground, to lose out, to go off the road, to crash into other competitors. I mean, you just dodged everything.
Almost. I just try to keep myself out of trouble. Don't overdrive the car, save the tires, and not crashing into other cars. Yes, but I went off 2 times.
I mean,
But
fair play to
not
you.
not
We
a
didn't
big
see them.
not a big thing.
Fair play to you.
Yeah.
We didn't see them, so we obviously thought you were flawless throughout. Now, one thing I've got to say, actually, that I was very impressed with was your timing of the pit stop when the rain came down. You kind of instinctively knew, right, we're not going to have any opportunities to get it wrong here. We've just got to go for it. Tell us about the pit stop phase, because that was pretty scary at that point.
I saw the rain, and I tried to stay out on the track as long as possible. When I started feeling more and more understeer, or the car is getting nervous handling, then I went in. Yeah, but I tried to stay out as long as possible, and yeah.
So in terms of what this does now, in terms of setting the tone for the rest of the season, you obviously wanted to start the campaign in the best possible fashion. I think it's fair to say you couldn't have really called that any better. You couldn't have driven that any better. It was a dominant victory in the category. How does this now set things up for the rest of the campaign?
Good question. I just go from race to race. Like, just keep myself out of trouble, clean race, and see how the result is in the end, I guess.
It's fair enough. Well, look, you're exhausted. You've worked incredibly hard. Enjoy the moment, and we'll see you again, hopefully, at Portimao. Great job.
Thank you very much. See you soon.
See you soon, buddy. What a performance. Timon Suvic managing to come home. It's actually 4th overall he got in the end. He just missed out on the overall top 3, which is even more stunning in terms of the comeback from John Uyan. To work his way from what was about 10th or 11th at one stage up to 3rd position. Tom Lane finishing up 2nd place in the Manta Squid Porsche. But let's hear from the man himself. Former champion, CMS Pro King, and the Peugeot superstar, Dan Kirby. Lights the flag. I mean, it wasn't as easy as we kind of made it out in the broadcast, Dan. There were moments when it all got away, but then, I mean, just able to master the deficiencies of the Peugeot in the infield and master the ebb and flow through the traffic. I mean, could that have gone any better if you tried?
Maybe one small moment when I got a little caught out lapping some traffic, but yeah, other than that, it went pretty smoothly.
I mean, I do want to talk to you a little bit about that, Dan, moment, and that was really the only thing that went wrong at any point in the race, because not only did the car get away from you, but you then had to flip it in reverse. Otherwise, you would have gone into the tires. So, I mean, what on earth does your head do at that moment? Do you just immediately go into panic mode, or do you have to try and control yourself and just bring yourself back into a state of calm to deal with the situation?
I mean, I had plenty of gap to the next car, so I was just trying to get back on the track, and if it was closer, then I might have been in panic mode, but I had plenty of time to, deal with it and just move on, get back by the guys again.
Very fortuitous. Now, I want to ask, actually, those last 27 minutes of the race when the rain was coming down, I mean, that looked pretty hairy for a lot of people out there. But obviously, with you being not only in the hypercar category, but you have a very unique car in terms of the downforce settings, because obviously there's no rear wing on the Peugeot, so it has great downforce in the dry. What on earth is that car like to handle in the wet?
Yeah, I was lucky my last fuel ran out right at I think probably the perfect crossover time to switch on terrain tires there. And then the car's actually really good in the wet because it's a four-wheel drive. So it has ridiculous traction coming out of the corners, but it was pretty sketchy on corner entry under braking. Yeah, it was really loose in the rear, so you kind of just had to take it easy, make sure you're not going to spin it.
I mean, it was fantastic to watch, and it starts your campaign for 2023 in the perfect fashion. Portimao up next, provided it stays dry. Is the Peugeot just going to run away and hide again, or do you envisage there's going to be a bit more pressure from the competitors?
I mean, part of you hopes it runs away.
I mean, seriously, do you think that there is going to be a little bit more from from BMW, from Porsche, from Cadillac. Do you think there's going to be a little bit more hard work to do to get Portimao nailed?
Yeah, it's possible. It's hard to say because the Peugeot eats like its front tires really bad. So I think a lot of like the sweeping corners of Portimao might kill its tires in comparison to some of the other cars. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Fascinating. Well, no, it's great to catch up with you, Dan. I mean, enjoy the moment because I think you've definitely earned it. Great way to start the season, and hopefully it's the first of many. Great job.
Yeah, thank you.
So there we are, ladies and gentlemen. What a fantastic start to the season in the 2.4 hours of Daytona. Mike, it's been such an incredible race. I mean, we couldn't have asked for any more entertainment and drama than we were given.
No, absolutely not. This was just the perfect start for me. You know, I said so at the beginning of the broadcast and like when we were first starting talking beforehand. This is all kind of new to me with the rFactor 2, and a lot of these cars are brand new. Obviously, some of these GT3 cars obviously have been around, but these new hypercars and everything. A lot of this is all new to me, and it's just been such an amazing race to kind of get my feet wet, dip my toes in the sand. I feel like I've learned so much today about these drivers and these cars, and I just cannot wait for Portimao.
Well, you were dipping the toe in the water. Wait till you're swimming the third of the triathlon, mate. You're going to absolutely love it once you're soaked up. It is a brilliant start from the Virtual World Sports Car Championship in 2023. There's the final result. Dan Kirby takes the win by a lap to Tom Lane and John Uyan, but promise you, it was way more exciting than that result makes it sound. Timon Suvic coming home as the leading Hypercar AM driver and fourth overall. Brad Sellers recovering to P5. Brian Hall, solid and consistent in P6. From Ross Smith, Magnus Dahlgren, Walter de Bruin with a world of problems, and Matthew Overton just about hanging on for P10. Guillermo Benchka in front of Philip Enrique. Barry DeMarzo coming home in 13th, and they were second, third, and fourth in category. Jerry Chen in front of Eric Moyne. Then the winner in GT3, Vasilis Katerinakis in front of Johnny Gutierrez, and the podium rounded out by Luciano Icazo in the Bentley. Wayne Hutchison retiring, but still technically classified 19th, and Eliseo Neto, the original pole sitter, in 20th place in GT. John Mayer in front of Brandon Gant, the two BMWs. Stephen Miller, the leading GT3 AM driver, just ahead of Ed Jones and Eugene Mazur. Then Tom Mountjoy ahead of Mike Boyce and Stuart Barge, who so nearly got the win himself. James Bowders, and then it was Vinicius Gonçalves of the BMRS Bentley Continental team. And then Filippo Morazzi, the last car home, in 31st position in the Ferrari. The retirements, well, there were many and plentiful. Alec King, thrown away, unfortunately, from his victory chances in the Pro GT category. Luis Lemos, almost a victor in GT3 AM. William Novak, Francisco Costa, George Angelidis all had their plays in their categories. Lewis Stevens was leading when he crashed out in his Ford Mustang. Will Miller in the Stewart House Cadillac, Gilles Lalonde and Norm Graff in a world of problems early doors. And then we had Stephen Boyce, and on the very first couple of laps, Zander Tolman of the CMS Pro Peugeot. It's been a sensational start to proceedings in the Virtual World Sports Car Championship. We've had an amazing time in the 2.4 hours of Daytona. And that pretty much wraps it up from us. Thank you very much indeed for watching. We're obviously going to be back in action again next time out in Portimao in Portugal. Don't forget to catch cmsracing.com, add it to your bookmarks, so like and subscribe, hit the notification bell. You'll never miss a race. You'll never miss a moment. And it's been fantastic stuff. My thanks to my colleague, Michael David, as well to my broadcasting partners in the booth, Phil Stocks and James Parfit. Thanks for all of you who have been watching on CMS Racing and on JPB YouTube. We cannot wait for the next time we go to battle in the Virtual World Sports Car Championship 2023. I'm Jake Sanson. Bye for now.